of Adjustment meeting, Monday, March 8th, 2021. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on December 10th, 2020, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Tri-Town News. Second, on December 29th, 2020, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on December 29th, 2020, said notice was posted in the office of the Zoning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues of what the board may legally consider in reaching their decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. For any members of the public wishing to ask questions or comment on an application, you will need to use the raise your hand feature when the chairman opens the hearing up for members of the public. Once you are brought into the meeting, you will need to have both audio and video. You will be sworn in and you will be required to give your name and address. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Mr. Cantor?
Here.
Mr. Hughes?
Here.
Mr. Mertens?
Here.
Mr. Moretti?
Here.
Mr. Orozco? I don't see. I think he's coming, but I'm not sure. Mr. Saya?
Here.
Mr. Stanton?
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez has been excused, and Chairman Nansen.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Tropoli, you mind swearing in the professionals, please?
Right. Jen and Charlie, raise your right hand. Please, you swear the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Right, professionals are sworn, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Approval of minutes. Hold on. Hang on. Got the wrong agenda here. I knew we had some minutes here. Okay. Approval of minutes, regular meeting, February 8th, 2021. Eligible voters, Cantor, Hughes, Mertens, Moretti, Saya, Nansen. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve. Mertens.
Motion by Mr. Mertens,
Second, Hughes.
second by Mr. Hughes. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. Moretti?
Yes.
Mr. Saya?
Yes.
And Chairman Nansen.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Regular meeting, February 22nd, 2021. Eligible voters, Cantor, Hughes, Mertens, Moretti, Saya, Gonzalez, Nansen. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Cantor. Do I have a second?
Second, Hughes.
Second by Mr. Hughes. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. Moretti?
Yes.
Mr. Saya?
Yes.
And Chairman Nansen.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Vouchers,
I have no vouchers this evening.
resolutions. Case number BA 1924, Christoph Roscoe, whatever,
Rosca.
Resolution granting use variance for expansion of existing single-family dwellings. Eligible voters: Cantor, Hughes, Mertens, Moretti, Orozco, Saya, and Nansen. Do I have a motion?
Saya, I make a motion to move.
Motion by Mr. Saya. Do I have a second?
Second, Mertens.
Second by Mr. Mertens. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Cantor,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Mertens,
Yes.
Mr. Moretti,
Yes.
Mr. Saya,
Yes.
and Chairman Nansen.
Yes.
Motion carries, resolutions memorialized.
Thank you. Case number BA 2105, MSC Enterprise LLC. Resolution granting bulk variance for covered porch and front yard setback. Eligible voters: Cantor, Hughes, Mertens, Moretti, Roscoe, Saya, Nansen. Do I have a motion?
Make that motion, Moretti.
Motion by Mr. Moretti. Do I have a second?
Second, Cantor.
Seconded by Mr. Cantor. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Cantor,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Mertens,
Yes.
Mr. Moretti,
Yes.
Mr. Saya,
Yes.
and Chairman Nansen.
Yes.
Motion carries, resolutions memorialized.
Okay, thank you. Application before the board, case number BA 2122, Demetria Roman. This is a use variance expansion of two existing single-family dwellings on one lot.
No, I think you have the wrong agenda there. It's an application for bulk variance approval for the construction of a single-family dwelling with a septic system on an undersized lot on premises known as Block 33, Lot 4 at 57 Sylvan Boulevard.
Yeah, that's where I was reading it from.
Oh, but it's not two dwellings, it's just one.
There was Mr.
Line
Chairman, there was an amended agenda.
Yeah, the first one I sent out was wrong.
Okay.
I think
don't have the
that
second.
that's the same one that's still on the website, Eileen. It still says use variance on the website.
Sorry.
So if someone pulled it up from there, that's probably what he's reading.
Yeah.
Okay. Application of Demetria Roman as applicant owner seeking a bulk variance approval for the construction of a single-family dwelling with the septic system on an undersized lot, premises known as Block 33, Lot 4, 57 Sullivan Boulevard. Expiration date April 20th, 2021. Howdy.
There goes my dogs now.
Well, that was interesting, isn't it?
It's awesome.
I think my cat just ran across the room here.
That's great. But not Pepe Le
So
Pew.
won't you feed those things?
I'll wait for the chairman to return.
Thank you. Mr. Galvin, do you have anybody else that you need to bring into the meeting?
Roman Demetria might be on the line, but no, otherwise, and I'm gonna do all the talking, I think.
Okay, I do have Demetria on there. Thank
And
you.
I do have, can I screen share for 1 second?
You can, or if it's an exhibit that I already have, I can do it for you, whichever is easier.
I don't think you have this. I copied something from Google Map. I want to show the board what was there previously.
Okay.
You want to mark that?
Yeah,
Eileen?
please.
Yes.
And I'm sorry for not submitting it sooner.
That's all right. Maybe you can email me a copy tomorrow.
I'll email you a copy tonight as soon as we get off the hearing.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, before we begin, have we heard from Mr. Orozco?
No, and he's not on the meeting yet either. I'm wondering if he's coming in at 7:30. I don't know.
You know, it's just so we can move Mr. Galvin's case. Mr. Stanton's on, he's alternate one, so let's
We'll move forward.
move forward with Mr. Stanton tonight. So we'll have a full 7. Okay, Dennis?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And the exhibit is going to be marked A7.
A8,
Whoa.
sorry. Proof of
So
service.
what was A7?
The proof of service dated February 26, 21.
Which is in order, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And This is a Google map?
It's a picture from Google Maps showing you the house that had been there.
Okay,
I think it's important to see it.
okay,
And I'll be able to explain what happened.
okay. Very good.
You
Okay,
can go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair.
Okay, you want to screen share that?
Yes,
Okay.
Go
I don't know
right
how to
ahead.
do it. Oh, okay, I got it. Okay. I'm usually on the other side of this. Do you see it?
It's
Yes, we
coming-
do.
There it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, it's higgledy-piggledy. This is like a reverse shot. It's like a mirror shot. The Lewis Street is really on your right, not your left, and the garage is really on your left, not your right. But that is a picture of the house that had existed.
Okay.
So Demetria goes into the building department, and she wants to add an addition to this home. She has the right to do it as long as it doesn't exceed 50% of the value of the home. It was the downstairs floor that you're looking at there was 900 square feet. She wanted to add 300 square feet, and all these things are not perfect. They're general. So they said yes. But when they get out in the field, somehow the knuckleheads knocked down the whole house.
Oh my
So
God.
that puts us before the board, because now when we want to put this small addition onto this home and clean it up and make it look a little nicer, we need a variance because we're undersized for purposes of this zone and the impact on the septic system. But there's already a properly functioned and authorized septic system on this property.
Mr. Galvin, question to you. By the new house that's going to be built in there, are they going to have to expand that septic system?
I don't think that anyone has suggested that to us.
Okay, but you still have to follow through Monmouth County Board of Health. for the-
Absolutely. We will, my client wants to do everything right. Whatever you ask us to do, we'll do.
Okay, you want to take that screenshot down so I can get the board back?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
Do
that's okay.
apologize. That's all right.
Mr. Chair, just to add on to that comment, Monmouth County Board of Health did issue a memo. They have already approved septic design plans for a system to service a 4-bedroom dwelling. So,
Okay, but
Thank you, Mr. Conlon.
Charlie, my question is the existing septic adequate enough to service a 4-bedroom dwelling, according to Monmouth County?
they've indicated that they've received and approved plans for a septic system size for 4 bedrooms. And if I'm not mistaken, Dennis, the current dwelling that's proposed only has 2 bedrooms. There is a potential second story that, you know, has a possibility to be finished. But if that's finished with a 3rd bedroom, you know, you'd still fall under that. So
Yeah, we're nowhere near 4. I mean, this is a very, very small dwelling, even with this 2nd floor addition.
Mhm.
13. It looks like 1,300 square feet.
Yeah, so regardless, Mr. Chair, they would either have had to have gotten certification from Monmouth County Board of Health that the existing septic system could handle it. I think, in fact, they noted that the existing dwelling's on a cesspool and that they have to abandon and get all proper certifications for that. So it's either the new septic system has been installed or they at least have plans approved and then they have to install with the new dwelling. So
Can we take that screenshot down?
Oh, I'm still sharing. Okay,
Yes, sir.
I'm not ignoring you. I'm just
Okay,
being an old guy. I'll figure it out.
so Charlie, do you have a problem with this, especially if technically, you know, we shouldn't be hearing this anyway, but
So the only reason we're hearing this because it's not serviced by public sewer. We actually had a similar application 4 or 5 lots north on Sylvan Boulevard there. So the variances that they need obviously is for the minimum lot size. Without sanitary sewer, you need a minimum 1 acre, 40,000 square feet. They also don't meet the ARE 1 front yard and side yard setback. 50 foot's required. They're at 32.7. The side would be 30 foot required where they're at 14.4 feet to the east side. I will note that this is in the R3 zone, so if it was serviced by public sewer, They would be compliant with all the bulk standards for the R3 zone as far as lot area. They got 20,000 where 15,000 is required. Front yard on internal streets 25 feet where they've got 32.7, and then the side yard requirements 10 where they have 14.4. So this is in an area of MAP public sewer service area, but we went through this exercise with that similar lot up the ways.
Yeah.
You know, the applicant, from what I can see on street view and mapping, would have to run, you know, potentially thousands of feet of sewer just to get this on public sewer for, you know, one individual lot is particularly burdensome for this applicant, I would say.
Would you also say that they wouldn't be able to do anything if Monmouth County Board of Health wouldn't approve a septic system?
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to provide public sewer to the lot if they couldn't get septic system approval.
Correct.
I agree.
They already have a approved plan, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
And then just a matter of, so Dennis, obviously it says you got approved plans. I would just, with that, if there's any way through the plans, we had a concern with the other lot about water table being high and a mounted septic system or something like that. If there's an alternate design where they could do a shallower, or if there is any grading, you know, it's minimized to the best extent practical. You know, would the applicant have an issue with that?
No, we know that we have to bring it into compliance. This is guys, this is an oops. We really shouldn't have been here. If they didn't take the building down, we had approvals to go. And then out in the field, you know, what was simple became complicated because they took the whole building down.
I
Because
know,
it
but I
was
think
so
you're
small.
misunderstanding what Charlie's getting at. So the concern is that when you say, yes, we're gonna have a septic system, we're envisioning a below grade system. And if the water table is high and the system becomes mounded, that's a problem because aesthetically, that's not exactly what we consider ideal. And we've had that circumstance occur in the past where we've approved projects on septic and then the water table issue has come and then we get this big ugly mound in the front yard and we do not want a repeat of that. So I think
make a
he's trying to
suggestion.
glean, do you anticipate that there's going to be an issue with providing the system, you know, below existing grade instead of having to mound it?
How about this? How about if we have to mound it, we'll come back?
I think that's a fair enough.
That's
Okay,
good.
because I'm a dummy. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
and
having
the
a
only
good
reason,
technical-
and the only reason we make that note, Dennis, because it is a through lot, so there's that technical frontage, even though it's the practical rear for the dwelling.
I see a plan with a long rectangle on it that tells me that's where the septic system's going in the back, but I don't know. I don't know what it's, and I agree with you, Jen. I wouldn't want it to be mounded if I could avoid it.
Charlie, do you have a problem with Mr. Gavin if they get the septic design, have the elevations and just double check that?
Yeah, I think they can provide something, you know, provide a copy of the plan for our review as a resolution compliance matter. And then just a couple, 2 waiver items. Obviously, they've got curb on the Sylvan Boulevard frontage. There's no sidewalk proposed. There's no sidewalk existing on any adjacent property. Same thing with the Rochelle Ave technical frontage, the practical rear. There's no curb and sidewalk proposed, but there's none adjacent. And I just would note, if they did knock down all 3 of the walls, we wouldn't be even having this discussion. They would be able to do it by right without requirement for that. So I take no issue with that. The only comment that I do have, Mr. Chair, is the dwelling and the garage that's out there, from what I could see, at least from street view and aerials, didn't appear to have any paved driveway to it. And now there's one proposed from what I understand. Dennis, would the applicant have an issue with providing dry wells for that increase in impervious coverage? For the dwelling?
Again, assuming the water table's adequate, why not?
Okay.
We can have our guy take a look at that.
Yeah. And
Or maybe not a dry well, maybe something that maybe
rain garden, some kind of feature where it's, you know, we're gonna get some kind of recharge, not just pushing it all to the road.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand.
And then as far as like utilities, so you got the septic, there's public water across the front there. We just know they got to get any road permits if there's any opening, and then any damaged curb replaced as required. And then we said this, so the second story, or I guess half story, is there an intent to finish that and have habitable space, Dennis? And then is there any basement proposed?
I don't believe there's a basement. I'd have to ask my client what's happening with that second floor, but it's gonna be habitable. That's
Okay.
the whole
Well,
point. of it.
Dennis, we'll need to swear her in because she hasn't been sworn in yet.
Yeah, I was
Is she-
trying
do you want
to
take a little
avoid making
testimony
her.
from her? Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
Ms. Roman, can you unmute, please? Thank you. That's good. I'm going to swear you in, and Mr. Galvin's going to ask you some questions. So raise your right hand, please. You swear the testimony that you'll give tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes,
Yes, state your name, please.
Demetria Roman.
Mr. Galvin.
All right, so the second floor is gonna be about 300 square feet, right?
Yes, that's whatever say at the plans.
All right, and you're gonna use it, right?
Yes, I'm planning in the future, yes. We see.
Okay. All right, and is it gonna be one bedroom up there, or what were you planning for that space?
2.
2? Okay. And do you know anything about the septic system or what's happening with that?
Well, the septic system is done. My engineer contacts the health department and pre-home. They say it's no problem. And the guy come here and do everything. The inspectors come, they say everything is fine. So it's done.
Is it mounded?
Yes.
So-
A little bit, okay, a little bit.
Yeah, a little.
And very little, very, very little. You barely see it. Because that's the way you're supposed to do it. That's what the inspectors recommend.
Well, that's how they have to do it because of the water table. That's not how they have to do it just because. But I'm gonna need to see grading. I'm sorry.
Okay, can we do that subject too?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right,
I mean, yeah, I don't have a problem with it, understanding that if we can't come to an agreement, you're gonna have to come back.
I think that's fine, Jen. I really,
That's fine.
I can't be more cooperative than I.
No, I
Just
agree.
let's get
It's
out there,
just,
let's figure it out, and if you need some kind of buffer around it or something, we'll do it.
okay.
All right?
Yep.
We gotta move the ball for these guys and get their project back on track.
Yeah, so, and Dennis, there's no basement, right? No basement proposed?
Demetria, there's no basement, right? You gotta come off of mute, hon.
No
By the way,
basement.
hun's a technical term.
No
There's no
basement, okay.
basement there.
All right, Mr. Chair, that's all I have, other than saying that they gotta get any other necessary township permits for tree clearing and things like that as,
Yeah.
condition of the approval.
Yeah, we need a grading plan, so we definitely do need that.
We'll get that.
Okay, thank
We
you.
probably already have something if we did the septic system. So we'll get it into a format that Mr. Cunliffe can take a look at.
Okay.
And Jen.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
for me, for the life of me, I'd like to know who knocked all the 3 sides down, and, why aren't they here saying that they made the mistake?
That's a good point in every one of these cases, right? Every time the pool's mislocated. So regardless, we're an undersized lot and, we're wasting your time tonight is what we're doing.
Yeah, but that's how our ordinances are, so
Right.
we have to address it. Okay, any other questions from the board? Or comments? Okay, at this time, I'll take a motion to open the public.
Motion open.
Motion by Mr. Hughes,
Already.
seconded by Mr. Moretti. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Eileen, at this time, we'll open the public for questions or comments.
For any members of the public that are listening or watching the Zoom meeting tonight, if you have any questions or comments on the application for Demetria Roman, please use the raise your hand feature. You'll be brought into the meeting one at a time. And again, you will need to give your name and address and you will be sworn in. You will also need audio and video.
Do we have any public?
No one raising their hand. We'll give one more call. If anyone has questions or comments on this application, please use the raise your hand feature to be brought into the meeting. And I am not seeing anyone.
Can I have a motion to close public?
Motion to close.
Motion by Mr. Mertens. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hughes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Mr. Gavin, or let me go to Charlie. You have any further, Charlie?
Just one flat comment, and it's straightforward, just updating the setbacks, Dennis, for the ARE1 requirements in the zone, but that's straightforward in my letter. It's nothing serious.
All right, everything that Ron puts in the resolution, we're gonna get done.
Jen?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Any further from the board members?
Nope.
Mr. Gavin, you want to?
Would you like a dissertation on the C1 variance?
No,
I
no.
mean, look, the only thing I could say about this is it was an oops, but I think in the end, you're getting a new structure that'll be nicer than what was there previously. I think that's an advantage. I think this is a site that can accommodate the septic system, although it technically doesn't meet the requirements. And I don't think there's any negative impact. The house, the property to the corner, while it will eventually have a house on it, doesn't now. So there's really hardly any effect on anyone surrounding this property.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
Okay. Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to approve it's a bulk variance, as requested.
Okay. Okay, have a motion by Mr. Cantor. Do I have a second?
Already second that with the comment that it's nice having people coming in here now with all kinds of adjustments that Jen has to make or Charlie has to make. Just come in, take care of it and move on. Nice work.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Moretti. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Mr. Cantor,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
I would like to add, of course, with the, coming back about the elevations with the septic. And I would like to say yes.
thank you. Mr. Mertens,
Yes.
Mr. Moretti,
Yes.
Mr. Saya,
Yes.
Mr. Stanton,
Yes.
and Chairman Nansen.
Yes.
Motion
Mm.
carries.
Good luck.
Very grateful.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gavin.
Have a wonderful night.
You too,
Have
sir.
a good one, Dennis.
All right, guys. See you, Ron.
Right.
Okay. Do you want to take a 3-minute, 4-minute, 5-minute break real quick before we get into this other one? Because it's going to take a little bit on this other one.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, why
we'll
not?
take a 5-minute break here, Eileen.
Okay, the board is going to take a 5-minute recess and then we'll start our next application. They'll be back at about 7:33. The zoning board will now reconvene.
Here, sit down.
Okay.
Sit on your beanbag.
Okay. Next case before the board, case number BA 1823, Home Sweet Home Daycare Center, Inc. This is a use variance. Application of Home Sweet Home Daycare Center, Inc. as applicant and Camp Royale LLC is owner seeking a use variance approval to construct a 146 square foot addition to the principal structure for additional bathroom facility, 520 square feet addition to this principal structure for additional classrooms, a solar roof canopy at the rear of the principal structure, 20 by 40 pole barn in the rear left corner of the property, a 20 by 20 concrete pad, 10 by 17 refuge enclosure, and 4 new parking stalls on the west side of the property located just north of the existing parking stalls on premises known as Block 154, Lot 13, 321 West Farms Road.
Mr. Toto, do you have any other witnesses? I have Allison Coffin and Maria Camporeale here. Do you have
Yes,
any-
Eileen, I also have Rob Sibb, our engineer.
Okay, thank you. I'll promote him in and we'll be good to go. Okay. Go ahead and start.
Yes, sir.
Well, good evening, Chairman Nansen, members of the board, Ms. Rabano, and board professionals. Walter Toto, on behalf of Home Sweet Home Daycare Center Incorporated. Jurisdiction was established by providing an affidavit of service and publication. Ron and Eileen, I believe that is in order.
Yes, it is.
So noted.
Thank you. Thank you. So before everyone came back, I overheard a conversation between Ms. Rabano and Chairman Nansen about us bifurcating this application. We're here tonight seeking use variance relief. There are a number of bulk variances also. And with the board's pleasure, I'd at least like to hear what the board has to say about those bulk variances. Even if the board doesn't vote on those tonight, I'd like to gather as much information tonight as possible and do what we have to do accordingly to please the board and move forward and eventually, hopefully, get to site plan at some point in the future. So I'm not sure how the board wants to handle that, but my planner, Allison Coffin, is certainly prepared to talk about the use variance and the bulk variances as well.
I'm sure that Jennifer will, take the testimony and listen. My understanding is that if you're doing the use variance, you'll probably touch upon the bulk variances and get some direction for you as you move towards site plan, but I'll defer to Jen on that.
No, I agree. I mean, you have a copy of my letter, correct, Mr. Toto?
Absolutely, Ms. Beam, yes.
So as we go through the direct testimony, I'm gonna go through the letter, and if there's something on one of those variances that I need more clarification, I'll bring it up at that point.
You got it. Sounds good. So at this point, I'd like to call the principal of Home Sweet Home, which is Maria Camporeale.
Sure, Walter, well, why don't we do the following? This way you can move right through your presentation. Let's have all three of your witnesses sworn.
Absolutely.
And
Thank
this
you.
way you can move it that way.
Great.
All right, so Allison, Maria, and Rob, would you please raise your right hand. And Rob, let's say, folks, you have to unmute. Maria, unmute, and Rob, unmute, please. Perfect. You swear the testimony you'll give this evening be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, Maria, starting with you, your name for the record.
Maria Camporeale.
Thank you. Allison
Allison Coffin.
and Rob.
Robert Sibb, SIV is in Victor E.
Okay, all sworn. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ron. Maria, what is your affiliation with Home Sweet Home Daycare Center Incorporated?
I'm the owner and operator of Home Sweet Home.
Okay. And does Home Sweet Home own the subject property?
Camp Royal LLC owns the property in which Home Sweet Home leases from Camp Royal.
Okay. And are you the sole member of Camp Royal Estates LLC?
I am.
Okay. When did Camp Royal Estates purchase the property?
August 2015.
At the time of the purchase, Maria, what was what type of activity was the seller conducting at the site?
It was a private K through 12 school.
Okay, what's it called Voyagers?
Voyagers, yeah.
Okay, and what is the primary business of Home Sweet Home?
Child care from infants through 13 years old.
Okay, and also, so that includes nursery, preschool, before and after school care?
Correct. Infant care, nursery school, preschool, before and after school care. And then in the summer, more of a camp related activities.
Great. And when was Home Sweet Home established?
1997.
And you've been in operation at the subject property for how long?
5 years, 5.5 years.
So about 2015 you guys started?
Correct.
And when you first began operations in 2015, did you receive a certificate of occupancy from the Howell Township Building Department?
Of course.
Okay, great. And just Maria, in like 50 words or less, describe for the board the purpose of the expansion, the reason why we're here tonight.
All right, well, for the classroom, to add a classroom to separate the infants and the wobblers, the ones that are starting to walk. It's always ideal for, infants through 1 year old to be in a room, not with children who are walking, so that they can have their safe space, and the children who are beginning to walk have their safe space to be exploring the room. It's more educational for the children to be able to move about the activities.
So it's to separate, how old, when you say the wobblers, how old are the wobblers?
Like 1 to 2,
Okay, and you're separating them from the infants and the newborns, right?
the newborns, yeah.
That's the idea. Okay. How about the purpose of the bathroom, the expanded bathroom, or the additional bathroom?
I mean, the purpose of the bathroom is to have more bathrooms. When you have, children who are 2 years old trying to potty train, the faster that they can get to a bathroom, the better.
And right now, the bathroom is in what location? The existing bathroom?
The existing bathrooms are at the, the westerly end of the building.
The opposite end of where the 2-year-old classroom, right? All right, so this makes it, the proposed bathroom makes it more practical for the 2-year-olds who are beginning their potty training, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then also, Maria, what is the purpose of the pole barn that's located at the rear of the property, which we've moved to comply with the fire chief's request? But I'll have Rob Siv talk about that with the board. But Maria, just in general, what is the purpose of the pole barn?
Storage, shade from, again, when we are a camp, shade to have activities being pulled out of the pole barn and brought back into the pole barn for safekeeping. I've had, slip and slides fly away. I've had, things kind of go missing if they're not in a safe area. So just to be able to have shade, storage, and do activities, small activities in there, and pull them out and put them back in.
So it sounds like the current storage situation is not ideal. Would you describe it in that fashion?
Yeah, not at all. There's no storage.
Okay.
I do have there are three sheds on the property, as you can see, but they're tearing down as well. They're not that free from the element.
Fair enough. And would you agree that the pole barn will not be used as a classroom?
Yeah, it's not going to be a classroom.
But what's the plan for utilities to the pole barn, Maria?
Honestly, a light so that
Electric.
Electric, so you could see inside.
But not water, not won't be connected to there's no bathroom in the pole barn?
No, no bathroom, no AC, no heat.
Okay. So just changing course here for a second, Maria, what licenses do you have from the state of New Jersey to conduct this business?
I have a child care license from 0 to 13 through DCF. And I also have with the Board of Health a camp license.
DCF being the Division of Children and Families at the state? Okay. And what about your employees? What are their qualifications or licensing requirements from the state? Or what have they been issued by the state, I should say?
Yeah, all employees are, have their fingers printed, background checks through DCF as well, and through the state of making sure that they don't have any criminal history, and they've had no history of abuse or neglect on children. I'm very fortunate in having my employees. Most of them have been with me for 10 plus years.
Great. And as far as the number of children that you care for at any given time, what does the state say about that? What are you permitted in that regard?
So I'm licensed for 52.
Okay. And what do you typically average each day, giving absences and parent schedules, et cetera?
I would say about 46.
Okay. Okay. So when you say 52 children, how many families does that consist of?
I want to say 30, maybe. Oh, I forgot. I wrote it down. Hold on. I'm sorry. Don't remember. About 32 families.
Okay, okay.
Mr. Toto,
So, because some families have multiple children.
Mr. Toto, real quick, with the expansion, will that number go up once the expansion's completed?
Understood, Chairman. Fair question. Marie, explain to the board the difference between how many kids are on site per your license at any one time and enrollment. To the chairman's question, let me back up. Let me make this more simple. How may enrollment expand with this application?
It may or may not increase. Again, so I deal with families, and so families come with multiple children in them. So for example, a lot goes into increasing your enrollment for childcare centers. Not only it needs to be 32 square feet per child, plus there needs to be a certain amount of bathrooms and sinks to increase the enrollment. So a lot of things go into increasing the enrollment, inspections from DCF as well, and they would approve the space, so a lot goes into increasing the enrollment or increasing the per diem enrollment.
Sure.
So back to that one question, just as an example, I have two students now who are included in the number that I gave you. Mom just had a baby, so it wouldn't be increasing the amount of families that come. So she has a baby, that infant would be, placed ideally in that classroom that I'm intending to, construct. So it could go up, it might not. It's not really what the intent is.
Yep. Go ahead,
No,
Chairman.
I understand that, but what we've got to look at is the overall picture. If you expand by, say you put 1,000 more square feet, and then the state comes in, I'm not, this is hypothetical. I'm not saying you're putting
So the
1,000
room,
square feet, but you're adding a bathroom, you're adding, further capabilities to the school. So now the state comes in. Right now, you're licensed for 52. Do you think the state would increase that 52 based on the square footage it's going to happen now?
I mean, maximum, absolute maximum is bathrooms do not count. So I believe it was 520 square feet for that additional room. Divide that by 35.
So
it's 35 square foot per child.
So I guess the question is yes or no. So the answer, I guess, is yes. I mean, I know that there's a lot goes into it, but honestly, if the answer is yes, then the answer is just yes.
Yeah, Jen.
But so the answer is no.
Answer is yes.
It's important. Hold on one second. It's important because if the answer is no, 52 is going in the resolution, and then you're going to be capped.
Exactly.
So if there's potential for more, the answer is yes.
Yes.
Jen, I would put it this way. I don't need to testify for my client, but it's a fair question by both you and the chairman. So at any given time, we're talking about 52 that are licensed, right? And the board right now sees us as having 52 at any given time on the site. So I suppose I would say if that increased, I think we'd have to come back before the board for further relief.
Not necessarily.
Right, but I mean, in reality, we're not going to be standing at the front door with a clicker. So,
no, I understand that.
So the reality is that what we're asking, I think, is a very simple question. You're putting on another classroom. So I'm inferring that you're anticipating you don't have enough room. You potentially could grow in the future, and now you're adding 500 some odd square feet. So I think we're overcomplicating this question, but at the end of the day, if the answer is potentially yes, then the answer should be yes. Simple, and that's it.
Yeah, but the answer, Jen, and I appreciate that. It can't be yes right here and now tonight for the purposes of the use variance, because our use variance testimony will be predicated on 52. So I would say if we increase in the resolution, we'd have to come back and ask you for that increase. Because right here and now, with the use variance, we're asking for 52. And
So
then-
Walter, is what you're saying that your client is going to stipulate to 52 max attendance at any time? That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, at any time, correct, Ron, yes.
Okay.
That's going to go in a resolution if the board looks favorably on it, you know.
No, I understand that completely. And listen, and Ron, if I have to come back, we'll be back before the board asking for that increase.
Okay.
All right.
That answers my question.
Walter, could I just ask a question to clarify the use of the pole barn? So I know there was testimony about it being for storage and for equipment and things like that, but there was also mention of activities. Like, are you having activities during inclement weather inside the pole barn, or that's just for solely storage purposes?
Maria, can you speak to that, please?
So I would say it's for storage purposes, activities, meaning if I wanted to put easels in there and not have to drag them back inside, I could put easels in there and they can paint and then we could put them back in. So activities such as easels.
So again, the answer is yes. Like there will be
Yes.
activities in the pole barn.
Sure.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, I don't know how that rolls into like a, compliance with like whether that's occupancy and whether there's, fire suppression or other utilities that need to be provided for that. That would be my concern. If it's just a storage pole barn, that takes the whole matter out of the question. I mean, you have a huge canopy structure going on the back side of the main building. I mean, can we agree to that just being a condition for it to be, just for storage purposes, to take that out of the question?
Can we phrase it as such that if we did need approval, further approval from the state, that we'd have to obtain that if we wanted to conduct activities?
I mean, Jen, that goes to the use, right?
No, I mean, the
Goes
short
with
answer
the
is
use.
no. Like you guys need to be very clear about what your operations and what you're asking for. As you know, the variance here runs with the land.
Sure, of
So
course.
we need to know specifically, and if the answer is yes, there are going to be activities, which means that there's kids there, then we need to know that. So it's not just simply the licensing. While I know that that's important, you're here for a variance and we need to know exactly what is going on so the board is aware of what you're asking them to vote on. So, I don't need to be difficult, but I feel like some of these questions are very straightforward and we're kind of dancing around the answers.
Yeah,
So
yeah, Jen, I get it.
I'm not saying it's intentional, but I'm just saying that, sometimes people overly complicate these questions thinking that there's going to be limitations. And I think the board is really just trying to understand what it is you guys are proposing.
Sure, Jen.
And so
I get
I
it.
just want to,
Yeah, we don't mean to dance around and we don't mean to
Right.
waste the board's time. We're sort of, and I hate to even put it this way, sort of feeling things out to see what might be palatable to the board. And that's basically the genesis of this
The
discussion.
main thing, if you're gonna have kids in there, I don't know if a pole barn is gonna be sufficient enough through inspections to be, to have activities underneath there. Storage, yes, but it might have to be an elaborate pole barn to be able to have people underneath there and doing activities in it. That's why we're trying to figure out what your full plan is, so we know where we're gonna have to judge on.
Sure.
Because, that's a lot of it.
Maria, can you speak to that as to whether we can live with storage only in the pole barn? Maria,
So here's my concern. I don't want to be in a situation where if a teacher and children are bringing stuff back into the pole barn and, oh my God, there's a kid in the pole barn. It's not going to be used as a classroom where they sit there for an extensive period of time or any time in the pole barn.
because I think the answer then is no. Yeah, no children's activities. Yeah, Maria, that's not going to happen. That's not what the township's about. It's yes, but the answer is no on that score. No
Correct.
activities. Okay. Okay, anything else on that, or I'll move on?
Yep, we can move on.
Thank you. So Jen, Maria, what are your hours of operation and days?
Monday through Friday from 6:30 a.m. until 7 p.m.
Okay, so no weekend activities?
Correct.
Okay, and how many employees do you have?
12,
And are they all, is there a mix of full-time and part-time?
yes.
Okay, and what's the maximum of employees on site in any given day or any given time?
Between 8 and 10.
Okay, and how do you stagger your employee schedules?
Everybody has a 4-day work week and they come in at different times. You know, one employee might come in at 6:30, they open, the next person comes in at 7, the next person comes in at 7:30, the next person comes in at 8.
Okay, so explain to the board, Maria, how children arrive on site.
Several different ways. You know, I actually have school buses and I transport about a third of the students to and from the center. Others do come in through their parent. You know, the parent drops them off. Other ways is, for example, one of the Howell Township schools could, you know, drop a child off. So that's how that, you know, those children come in. So multiple different ways.
Okay, and as far as the actual timing of the drop off, how do the parents actually physically drop off? Are they parking or someone coming out picking up the kids? What actually goes down in that regard?
The parents will park. It's according to their work schedule. You know, if a parent works 7 o'clock in the morning, drops off, the next parent might drop off, you know, 7:30. It's very staggered. What was the second part of your question, actually?
Well, I guess the second part was how long it takes the parent to actually drop off the child.
Probably like 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
They park, they get their child, they bring them in, they settle them in, say goodbye, and then have a good day, and then they're out.
Okay, and have you had problems or complaints from parents in the past about the drop off or pickup process?
Never.
Okay. Okay. And is there a dedicated drop off zone?
In the parking spaces.
How about the
The
school
school
buses?
buses, yeah, the school buses do drop off at the end of the walkway.
Okay. And Maria, right now, how many classrooms do you have?
5.
And with this proposed expansion, you'll have how many?
6.
Can you describe the existing square footage of each of the classrooms, each of the 4 classrooms? I'm sorry, each of the 5 classrooms that exist.
So I'd have to go back. There's 2 classrooms that are 420 square feet.
Well, you know what? Let me pause there, Maria. Chairman, I have there was a document that was not submitted. I apologize. We've got a rough sketch of the internal layout of the facility. And my engineer has a copy of it. May I screen share that?
Eileen, please.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
Thank you, Eileen. Rob, can you, while Maria's just about to go over this, can you show the board that?
Just make sure to send that to me, Rob. And
Will do, Eileen, absolutely, tonight.
we'll mark that as A7.
Thank you.
Is it on the screen?
Yep, got you.
Okay, perfect.
Rob, can you take away that, what's happening in the center there, or is that just on my screen?
No, it's on everybody's.
Oh, great, okay. So Maria, you see what's on screen, correct?
Yeah.
So
Do you guys get to see my cursor or not really?
I think since Rob is screen sharing, well, I don't know, can you?
No.
Okay. So you enter the building through that double door. Yeah. And then this is a lobby. And then as you go to the west side of the building, there's a kitchen. You see the 2 bathrooms and a mechanical room and, you know, a classroom for the older students.
Maria, how big is that classroom for the older students?
Roughly, it is 315 square feet.
Okay, 315. And when you say older students, what do you mean? Between 5 and 12?
Yeah, the 5 to 13. Yep,
That's more like an after-school room then, correct?
correct.
Okay.
Really only utilized in the good old days for the after-school care.
Fair enough. Great. Okay. Why don't you slide down to the, actually what's the west, the property is flipped, right? So the west goes to the left.
Yes, the
I
west.
mean, the east rather, the east goes to the left. So go ahead.
No, I think that is east to the
You're
left.
right. It is east. You're
Okay.
right. Because it's
So
north
so
faces.
there's 2 doors there. This is like a railroad style classrooms. The bottom one is the 3-year-old classroom that leads into the 2-year-old classroom. And if you were to go into the top door, yeah, then there's the 4-year-old classroom railroading into the what's now the infant toddler classroom.
Maria, starting with the infants and then going clockwise, how big is the infants classroom?
420.
And then how about the 4-year-olds to the right?
595.
And then 3s below?
350.
And then the 2s to the left?
420.
And the proposal is for how many square feet, Maria?
I think you said 520, I believe you said.
We'll confirm that with in Rob and Allison's testimony, but I believe that's correct. Okay. Maria, just to continue going forward now, is there ADA access to the building?
Yeah, it's all one level. Yeah, all one level. There's no stairs. So, yes.
And do you have handicapped parking on site?
Yes.
Okay. How many spaces?
1. That was all during the CO. That's what they had required.
Okay. And just before I have Rob take this off, actually, Maria, I just wanted to explain to the board why we're proposing to expand on the easterly end, I'm sorry, of the building, as opposed to the opposite side where the mechanicals are, et cetera.
Well, I guess on the west side is the parking lot. So I really can't see because everybody's faces are on that side, but beyond the west side is the parking lot. Also, you have the mechanical room, you have the bathrooms. The idea is that on the east side, I could, essentially have a door leading into that room without any complications of a bath, the mechanicals or the bathrooms or the office. I mean, there, to the right of the mechanical room is the oil tank. So why interrupt or disturb any of that? So it'd be the best place to put it.
Maria, how about, there was a question in one of the reports, I believe in Engineer Cunliffe's report, about hosting large events. Did you host any events beyond daycare at the facility pre-COVID?
Well, it's all relative to childcare, but I've had a grandparents' tea. Grandparents sign up and they sit in the classroom because that is when the 5 through 12 children are at school. So we utilize that room that is marked classroom 5 through 12 years. So, yes, grandparents' tea, gingerbread making event, but
How many grandparents show up for something like that?
I would say maybe 10, but it's maybe 2 grandparents, 1 car coming.
Yeah, and how long are the events?
Like an hour and a half, 2 hours tops.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to advise the board about, Maria?
Can I just go back to the events for
Yeah,
a
sure.
minute? Well,
Yeah, of
so do
course.
you have you have kindergarten, right, at this facility?
No.
So when the kids graduate, let's say pre-K, do you have like a graduation for them?
Yes, I have. Yes, that's also another activity. But depending upon the size of the class, I mean, right now, I believe I only have 8 4-year-olds that will be turning 5 and graduating.
Right. So, I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to be an unmanageable number, but it could be more than 10. I just want to, when we ask for these things, it's just to make sure we can look at the upward limit so that you
Sure.
don't get restricted moving forward. If somebody sees like 20 cars in the parking lot or something.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Jen. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard for me to answer some of these questions because essentially I could just make this entire school a 4-year-old school. I can make the entire school just infants. So it's hard for me to answer with any certainty of how many it could be increased by.
Well, Maria, when you say that, that's not muddy the waters here. You certainly can't go above 52 based on the
Right.
state and based on what we're telling the board here tonight.
Correct.
Okay.
Above 52, but I could.
Because of that, you're certain, without
Right.
no equivocation, it's 52.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Walter, I just have a question going back to the, the different
Yeah, sure.
special events and parking. So right now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parking spaces on the site. When you have these events, where do all the grandparents park with all these employees already at the site?
Well, several of my employees don't drive. They get driven and or dropped off. So there's always parking. I've never had, I get inspections all the time. I've never had an inspector tell me I couldn't park.
So of the 8
there
to 10
has been
employees,
occasions where they will park, across the way from the door, which is a dirt kind of grassy area.
So the overflow, to answer Charles's question, it goes in front of the double doors across the parking lot.
Across the parking lot.
Yeah.
Not impeding on any entrance and exiting entrances or fire zones.
and no parking along the frontage in the right of way or anything like that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No parking along the right of way, like on West Farms Road, on the side of the road or anything like that?
Absolutely not.
Charlie,
So, and then of those 8 to 10 employees, you said there's, a couple of them get driven to the site. On a typical day, how many employees would you say park on the site?
Me, 1, 2, 6.
6. Okay. And you're proposing an additional 4 spaces. So that could handle parent drop-offs. And then also when you have some of these special events, so it's not all overflow throughout the site, it might be a couple in that grassed area across from the entranceway.
Absolutely.
Charlie, what would be the requirement for parking spaces?
So the ordinance really doesn't specify anything specific for like pre-K or daycares or anything like that. I put the requirement in there for elementary schools. The elementary school requirement is 1 space for every amount for every teacher or faculty. So if there's 10 teachers on the site, that would require 10 parking spaces. From that perspective, it certainly seems like they're meeting the requirement. There might be some instances when they have these special events where there is some overflow. If the board is particularly concerned about the parking on grassed areas, could they put in some of those like, paver blocks or like the temporary grass parking just to solidify it so it's not a mud pit or something like that. That might be something the board to consider. It's a small site. Once we start adding a lot of impervious coverage over what's already being proposed, then we're getting into the question of like stormwater and stuff like that. And I don't think that's a good thing.
Mr. Toto, have y'all applied to Monmouth County Board of Health?
We did receive a correspondence from the Board of Health. It was not, I think they wanted more information from us, but certainly we intend to apply and figure out the septic issue. I was going to have my engineer testify to that, Chairman.
Okay,
Sure, thank you.
board members, do y'all have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the applicant. Are the pickup times also staggered as they are in the morning? And what time
Yes.
would that be about, that they normally be picked up?
So I would say that pickup begins at 2 and till 7, and it's staggered. Maybe there is at any given time, maybe there's 2 to 3 parents picking up exactly at the same time.
Okay, the only concern that I would have is there adequate lighting for the cars coming in after dark in the evening?
Yes.
Well,
I
certainly,
think we might want to wait for the engineer to testify.
Okay.
Mr.
yeah,
Burns.
we'll address that.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
Any other, Mr. Mertens?
no, I'm good, thanks.
Walter, just one last question for Maria. So I think you indicated there could be some summer camp activities. What would those typical number of students be or campers be during a typical day during the
Yeah, Maria,
summertime?
does that, yeah, it's a question I forgot to ask, quite frankly. Thank you. Maria, does the camp activities, the numbers of kids coming during the summer, does that affect the numbers that we're talking about tonight, and why or why not?
No, 52 is the limit at which I have at any given time, 52 children.
And so are we talking about the same kids that come to summer camp? Or I know the parents do different things. You get an influx of other kids that you don't have normally during the,
Yeah, so I might have a teacher who pulls her child out for the summer, and I might have an older sibling who will come for the summer. So it kind of averages out.
okay, so you're locked into 52. What did you have last summer, for example? Well, that's a bad, forget that.
That's a bad question.
Yeah, about two summers ago, what do you have?
Again, usually my enrollment is about 46 to 52.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stanton, do you have any questions?
No, sir, I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Cantor?
Mr. Chairman, no, just my questions are going to be about the different aspects of this application, the different variances. So
Okay,
hopefully that'll get discussed.
okay. Mr. Hughes?
No, I'm good at this moment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Saya?
I'm just being a good listener right now, sir.
Mr. Merton?
I'm good right now, thanks.
Mr. Moretti?
I'm good at this time.
Okay. Mr. Toto, you
Thank
want
you,
to
Chairman.
go forward?
Yeah, I'd like to call the project engineer, Robert Siv.
Okay. Mr. Siv, could we get your qualifications and education, please?
Sure. I'm a graduate of New Jersey Institute of Technology. I'm a licensed professional engineer and certified municipal engineer. I have over 25 years experience in the engineering field. I've testified before this board as well as numerous boards throughout New Jersey.
We accept your credentials, sir.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Rob, describe for the board the engineering aspects of the plan. I'm sure we'll get into the reports, but why don't you take it from there?
So what I'm going to try to do is share my screen with my plan again, the variance plan, for the board to see. So we have it up on the screen while we're talking.
Rob, let's make sure we reference that as far as where it is on the exhibit list, which is, I believe, A5?
Yes.
Is that correct?
A5.
A5. Thank you.
Okay.
Rob, go ahead.
I'll just briefly describe the existing site quickly for the board. I'm sure the board's familiar with it, but quickly, the site is located within the ARE2 zone and has an area of approximately 2 acres. The property is currently developed with an approximately 3,221 square foot, 5-classroom, 1-story daycare facility with a concrete patio and canopy attached to the rear of the building. There's an in-ground swimming pool on the easterly side of the property. And there's other ancillary structures and sheds in the back. The site is accessed via a one-way circulation driveway from West Farms Road near the westerly property line and circulates in what I call an inverted U in front of the building in a counterclockwise fashion with exiting onto the east side, exiting from the east side of the property back onto West Farms Road. The driveway provides access to the 6 parking stalls to the west of the existing building, and the building is served by a septic system in the front and a well in the back. I'm sure the board's fairly familiar with the site, and that's the existing conditions of the property. Proposed, the applicant is proposing to construct a 140 square foot bathroom on the easterly side of the property off the, what I'll call the east end of the building, and a 520 square foot new classroom off the front easterly corner of the existing building. Also proposed and is an expansion of the rear canopy to provide additional shade over the existing camp activities on the back easterly corner of the property, or the building. An additional 4 parking stalls are proposed along the westerly property line. And an enclosure for the existing dumpster is proposed along the easterly property line, and an identification sign is proposed near the entrance driveway. As Mr. Toto indicated, there is one plan modification from what is currently depicted on this plan, and that is the proposed 20 by 40 foot pole barn will be slid or relocated approximately 55 feet to the west. And this was done to accommodate or comply with the Township Fire Bureau's review letter. Their concern was to have access from a paved surface to within 150 feet of that structure. So by sliding the pole barn to what I'll call the center of the rear property area, that 150 feet is accommodated.
Rob, what is the height of the pole barn?
The building height of the pole barn will be 15 feet.
Okay, thank you. Please continue.
While the planner will address the variances and waivers, I just want to touch on 3 of them. One is the township ordinance requires main driveway and circulation aisles to have a minimum width of 30 feet. The existing one-way circulation driveway has a width of 22 to 23 feet. This plan has been reviewed by the Township Fire Bureau. I have spoken to Chief Lewis, and the existing one-way driveway, along with the relocated pole barn, would be approved by his office. So from a fire and emergency standpoint, they are acceptance of the one-way existing 22 to 23 foot wide circulation driveway. That's how it exists today, and it's been functioning for the site fairly well. The second one variance is the site's lot coverage. Including the existing synthetic grass, which is under an existing play structure on the property, the existing lot or impervious coverage is approximately 24.5%, whereas the ARE2 zone permits a maximum lot coverage of 15%. The proposed improvements will increase the lot coverage to approximately 28.6%, including the synthetic grass that's under that existing play structure. And as recommended in the board engineer's report, pending approval of the use and then going to site plan, dry wells collecting the additional roof runoff area will be provided at that time. Again, the planner will expand upon this variance, but just to get the numbers straight and everybody on the same page, it'll be a 28.6% lot coverage proposed, and dry wells will be provided for that additional roof runoff area. Lastly, as indicated in Mr. Cunliffe's letter, we talked about parking. We are providing the 10 parking spaces. The township ordinance generally allows for a one-way circulation aisle to be 12 to 15 feet wide. While there's not specifically parking proposed along the 20 to 23 foot wide aisle, if in those instances that were briefly described before where there's additional parking needed, there is the ability to have a couple cars parked along the circulation aisle and still provide that 12 to 15 feet of one-way circulation through the driveway. So just to provide that as a point of note, there is some additional width for the existing driveway. But that's the proposed improvements. I can go through Mr. Cunliffe's letter and touch on those items that are specific to engineering, unless there's any questions before we do that.
Rob, before you do, just board member Mertens had a question about lighting. And listen, I know we're bifurcating, but what's in your head about lighting and what might we propose? And is it feasible enough to, and do we have room enough to make it so that there's traffic safety, especially during the winter time when the sun goes down early?
My recollection and understanding is there are building mounted lights on the existing building, which provides lighting for the site. We can do a lighting review as part of the site plan process. And if additional lights are needed at the entrance or exit driveways, we can propose them at that time.
So you see no issues with traffic safety and lighting, Rob, right? Given,
Correct. That can be addressed with the existing lights and any additional lights that may or may not be needed.
okay, thanks, thank you. And Rob, just how about the septic? And I know it's typically a site plan issue. What are your early thoughts with regard to the septic and applying to the Monmouth County Board of Health in that regard?
As you indicated, as part of site plan approval, we would have to go to the Monmouth County Board of Health to either certify the existing septic system or propose a new septic system. It's my understanding that this existing septic system is towards the end of its life, I'll call it, and that a new septic system would be proposed and designed at that site plan time.
Fair enough. Thank you, Rob.
If there's any other questions, or do you want me to jump into the T&M report of November 17th, 2020?
Yes, we could do that. Can we get the full screen back?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, any questions at this point from the board? Seeing nobody raising their hand. Okay, we can go into T&M's letter.
All right, I am going to jump in that letter to page 7. The first 7 pages are description of the site and a listing of the various variances and waivers that the planner will go through. So from an engineering standpoint, I don't believe there's anything I need to touch on in that letter. If there is and I missed something, just let me know and I will circle back to it. Starting on the top.
Rob, on that point, so we did cite in there that you got a trash refuse enclosure in the front yard area. Can that be relocated anywhere else on site so it's not in the front yard area? Like you have your main driveway that's coming into the parking. Is there any ability to relocate that so it's at the end of that main aisle where the parking is? You know, you pull straight into the site with the hauler, you load up the trash refuse into the truck, you back, and then you make the U. Is that possible, or?
We could relocate the trash enclosure there. I would note that the existing, I'll call it dumpsters that are on site now are located where we propose the trash enclosure. From a circulation standpoint, the trash or the garbage trucks comes in the entrance driveway and is able to circulate through the site with minimal backup. If we were to put it at the end of that drive aisle, he would have to back down that driveway when he's exiting the site. To answer your question, yes, it's possible. I just think the other location may be a little bit better from a circulation standpoint. We are proposing to enclose it, but I mean, as the board's pleasure.
I would strongly urge you if the board acts favorably on the use variance and before you come back for site plan, to find a different location.
Understood.
From where it is now. It's in the front. It's aesthetically not lovely. We don't like to see those things in the front. And so I would like to see that relocated. I think Charlie's suggestion is a good one. I know that that's a site plan issue, but if they, this gets approved this evening and you're coming back, that's something I'm definitely going to be looking for you to do. And just so you know, which is in our letter, we're going to be looking for, a masonry enclosure. We're not going to be looking for fencing with slats or board on board or anything like that. We want a masonry enclosure.
And split-faced masonry block as you said in
Yes.
the letter? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, on both scores.
Great.
We'll take care of that. Absolutely.
Okay, Charlie, was there anything else I missed in those first 6 or so pages?
So, with overflow parking, with the applicant as part of the site plan, I hate to just see vehicles, and it's not going to happen that often, but it's a grassed area and cars are going to park there. I don't want to see the front of the site becoming a mud pit. Can we put in some kind of like permeable paver or like system like that? That's not, 100% impervious to stabilize it a little bit better so it's not slopping when you get a rain and people are parking there.
Sure, we can add some type of grass pavers in that front area to provide a stable temporary or short-term parking area.
Okay. And then as far as the signage, is Allison gonna touch on that? I think we got a subsequent submittal for an additional building mounted sign on top of the one proposed at the front of this site.
Correct. Yes.
So there's variances for the sizes of the sign that's currently proposed, the ground mounted ID sign out front. And then we're coupling that with an additional sign mounted to the building. As far as the size of the sign, I think it looks like it complies with the ordinance as far as wall-mounted signing. You're allowed up to 25% of the first floor facade. I think you're only at, I gotta pull open my thing here. I just want to note it for the board's record, so they're considering. You got a 77 by 60 inch sign, so that's approximately 32 square feet. So, I mean, would you say that's modest, Rob, compared to the size of the first floor facade?
Yes, I would say it's modest, and yes, Allison will get into the sign testimony.
And you got 100 foot of building frontage with, you know, a 9 foot height's like 900 square feet, so you're like well under 25%.
That's correct.
Yeah. And then I guess Allison's going to talk about the buffer. So you do have, you show the one residential one at the rear of the site, the 50-foot residential. The pole barn's not in the residential buffer. However, we measure the setbacks from the buffer. So if it's a 15-foot pole barn, you're at 55 feet. So you technically need relief of that setback. You haven't also showed a residential buffer or a residential Q farm along the east side. You are relocating the pole barn, so it's more central along the back of the site there. So looking at that, Rob, if you're shifting at 55 feet, would you say that that's now compliant with 50 plus 15 from both side property lines?
Just to backtrack a second, it's my understanding that for site plans, the setbacks measured not from the buffer, but from the property line. And I mean,
That is in fact true. If you go, this came up in a TRC recently. The clear language says major subdivision, the setbacks are measured from the buffer line, whereas this is a site plan and a use variance application, so that wouldn't qualify. So technically they can measure the setbacks from the property line.
All right. But you would say,
to answer your question, Charlie, yes, by relocating that pole barn, it will be outside of the buffer and then the setback on top of that for that particular structure when it's relocated.
From the side, you're talking, Charlie, right?
Yes, from the side, not from the rear.
two sides.
Correct.
And then as far as right of way along the frontage, has that already been previously dedicated? Is that currently proposed, the roadway widening easement?
Yeah, I was going to get into that in your report, but yes, that is an existing roadway dedication that showed up on a 2015, I believe it was, survey done for the property.
Yeah,
Okay.
Charlie, the Voyagers came in before the board. We had requested that right away be part of that application at that point in time.
Okay, that's good. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't currently proposed and we're not changing any of the lot areas or any of the coverages. So that's a good thing. And then Rob, you can just pretty much hit the rest of the stuff that you want in the letter.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to start on the top of page 7, item number 9. The applicant should provide testimony regarding any existing or proposed loading areas. As you indicated, Charlie, an 8-foot by 32-foot loading zone is provided at the front of the building. It does not conform to the typical minimum size of 10-foot by 60-foot dimension required by the ordinance. Then indicate the board should discuss if waiver relief is required, as a daycare use is not listed. This is not obviously your typical commercial use. It is unique in that it's a daycare that utilizes 2 to 3 24-passenger school buses. Those size school buses are typically 8-foot wide by about 20 to 25 foot long. The existing loading area, as you indicated, is 8 by 32, which is large enough to provide space for the 24-passenger school bus. So for this site, that size loading area, I feel is appropriate for this use.
So Rob, let me just cut through the remaining comments. So generally the site drains in a west to east direction, right? So if you're looking at the plans from right to left, you're obviously above the impervious limit in the zone, but the applicant's already agreed as coming back during site plan, providing dry wells for all the expanded impervious coverage or rain gardens, whatever have you, depending on the water table.
Correct.
We also said the pole barn in the back, there's no classroom space. It's just going to be used for storage.
Correct.
The architectural makeup of the pole barn, it's just going to be like a butler building, pretty much.
Yeah, it'll look like your typical shed, I'll call it.
And it's all the facade frontages are less than 50 feet, so it doesn't have to comply with the architectural requirements in our ordinance. That's correct, right?
That is correct. It's 20 by 40.
And then the last comment I had was on the right of way, which we touched upon. And then the plat details are all items that can be provided under site plan, Mr. Chairman. It's all construction details, in accordance with,
the trash enclosure, concrete pads, asphalt pavement, and things of that nature. So you have no issue with doing that under site plan, Rob?
No, not at all.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Jennifer, do you have any?
I just have one question, and are you deferring landscaping to site plan?
Yes.
Okay, so just so that you're aware, there are some significant landscaping requirements specifically in a farm buffer. So I would recommend that you reach out and coordinate with Shari, our certified tree expert, if the board acts favorably and before you come back for site plan. She has specific species requirements and other kinds of items that she will be looking for, and the board relies upon her expertise. So I would just make that recommendation between now and site plan.
Okay, understood.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anything else from the board members?
Mr. Chairman, one
Yes,
thing,
sir.
Jennifer had mentioned moving the disposal dumpster area. I agree 100%. The only thing is, maybe the applicant can answer this. Would the disposal company be able to come at a time where it's not going to be during drop off or pickup time?
So I heard what Jen said, and I think moving it would be difficult. Now you're talking near the oil tank, which I would not want to even be disturbed. I don't see where putting it in the front of the ends of that driveway would even look pretty.
I'm just gonna say respectfully, you're not allowed to have it in the front yard, which is where it is right now. So it's there, it's not.
Which is where it was prior to
I
me
understand that,
being
but now
there.
you're back asking to expand a non-permitted use, so you need a use
So-
variance. So you know, at the end of the day, I'll reiterate that leaving it in its current location is gonna be problematic for you moving forward. I would strongly and I think your attorney already agreed that between now and site plan, if you are approved, the location of that trash enclosure is going to be relocated. And I understand that it's not an ideal situation, but you know, we have rules and regulations, and keeping it in the front yard is not something that this board typically allows at all. Your site is quite large, so there is room to relocate it, and I would say we don't have to get down to the details of it at the second. But when you come back for site plan, if we get over this hurdle, I'm gonna be looking for it to be relocated. Because leaving it where it is right now, for me, is kind of non-starter.
Yeah, Maria, we're
With,
going to
with
have to
that, with
relocate.
that said, with
Yeah.
that said, putting it in the backyard would then mean for a large truck to come through and potentially be in where the children are playing in the backyard. And then also
I
backing
understand
up,
what you're saying, and I would
backing up
strongly
in a
recommend,
driveway.
I would strongly recommend that we put a pin in this conversation if until you get through this part of the hurdle, because if they say no, then the matter goes away.
Yeah,
Then
Jen,
it's-
I think,
Right, so I would just defer again to Mr. Toto. I need it to be relocated out of the front yard. You guys, I'll leave it to you to figure out the best location for it, but where it's located right now is not gonna be acceptable when you come back for site plan.
yeah, and I think
So-
Rob can work this out and we could talk.
Yes,
to
I
Jen
agree
and Carly about
wholeheartedly,
this. Yeah,
but you know, at the end of the day, it's definitely something that we're gonna be looking for when you come back.
yeah, I think it's, you know, the die is cast on that, so we're gonna have to work that out, and I think Rob is skilled enough to make it work for everyone. So. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
do the school buses leave after they drop off, or do they stay on the property?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, Maria, can you answer that, please?
So the township buses, they come, drop off, pick up, leave, but I have 2 school buses that stay on the property.
Where do they park?
Typically at the eastern part of the driveway.
Is there dedicated parking there?
Kind of where Mr. Siv had mentioned that the width of the driveway is, you know, quite big. So they park at the very end of the driveway there. kind of like in front of the building though.
Yeah, so if the board,
If I had a picture, it would be
yeah,
easier
if
for
it's
me
the
to.
board's pleasure to have us dedicate that to those spots for the buses. Rob, you mentioned that the drive aisle is wide enough to allow for the free flow of the one-way traffic, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
So just clarify that they're parking in the drive aisle or they're parking in a grassed area off the drive aisle?
In the driveway.
Yeah, I can't, I don't know. I can't see how the fire official would have, approved something like that for vehicles to be parking in the drive aisle. What my recommendation, Rob, under site plan is we need to see some location on the site with dedicated parking for those buses. And it needs to be on some type of permanent pavement, not like grass paver parking. Cause it's, they're parked on the site overnight, Maria, is that correct?
Correct. And it's, if you look at the drawing again, you could see where the fire officials have required me to put the fire no parking fire part. And it's away from there.
Yeah, but I understand, but technically, if you want to go back to the original, whenever there was not to be any buses parked there. Hey, I was on the board in the original, whenever the Voyagers came in to the zoning board, and there was not supposed to be any buses parked in the front or on that site, period. I mean, that's something that's just come in over the years now, but there's really not supposed to be any bus parking there. And that was, if you go back to the resolution, Mr. Tropley, I think you could probably pull that up. I think that was a big discussion at that point in time with the Voyagers.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, Rob, assuming the chairman is right, and I have no reason to disagree or doubt him, what do you think about parking on the west side?
As part of site plan approval, it's clear that we would have to provide 2 locations for those 2 buses. We will review that as part of site plan review and demarcate those locations appropriately.
It looks like we have sufficient room, correct?
I think we can find a spot or 2 for those buses, yes.
Okay, it'll have to be 2. So, yeah, okay.
That's also going to increase your impervious coverage too.
It is indeed, unless we could remove some impervious, Rob. Is there any room for that anywhere? I don't know that there is.
I think the chairman's right that we're going to be at a position to probably have an increase in impervious coverage, but again, we'll review that as part of that site plan review.
All right. Okay. And to the extent that that causes a problem with stormwater management, we would account for that as well in some fashion, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Charlie, you have any further?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Jennifer? Okay. Board, y'all have any further questions? Just raise your hand or speak up, one or the other. Okay, Mr. Toto, you want to call your next witness?
Thank you, Chairman. At this point, I'd like to call Allison Coffin, the project planner. Allison, if you would.
Hello. I know the board is familiar with me, but you do like to have experts go through their qualifications for every application.
It's case by case.
Yep. So I have a bachelor's degree from Boston College. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey, and I'm a certified planner from the American Institute of Certified Planners. I've had that license and certification since 2005. In that time, I have appeared in front of more than 90 communities throughout the state, many, many times in Howell.
Yes, we accept your credentials.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Allison, if you would give the board the benefit of your planning testimony and your planning
Sure.
review.
The property in question is a little over 2 acres. It's located on West Farms Road, and the site is developed right now with a daycare center in a single-story masonry building, a concrete patio. It's got pool, playground equipment, sheds, and parking. The site's located in an area of residential and agricultural uses, and the applicant is proposing to expand and improve this site. This expansion and improvements include a canopy with solar panels over an existing play area, a 520 square foot classroom addition, a 140 square foot bathroom addition, a pole barn at the rear of the property, and a concrete pad for play equipment, increasing the parking supply by at least 4 spaces, signage where none currently exists out at the road frontage, and a trash enclosure. Now, the property is located in the ARE2 Agricultural Rural Estate Zone. The purpose of this zone is to minimize the impacts of development in areas located outside of the centers identified in the township's master plan. And the goals include preservation of rural and agricultural uses and preservation of rural character. Many areas include significant environmental constraints, including wetlands, floodplains, rare and endangered species habitats, aquifer recharge areas, and high quality watersheds. There are a variety of permitted uses in this zone. Agriculture and horticulture, single-family residences, municipal buildings and other public purpose buildings, community residences, and multi-generational family accommodations, but daycare centers are not a permitted use. So we're requesting a D2 variance to expand this pre-existing non-conforming use. There's some bulk relief that's associated with this, and I know the board won't be voting on those tonight, but I would like to address it since it is somewhat subsumed within the request to expand the use. For side yard, 30 feet is required and the proposed canopy is at 15 feet. And impervious coverage, 15% is permitted, 23% is existing. The current plan is at 28.6%, so we're proposing an increase, although the exact figure may change at the time of site plan if this application is fortunate enough to advance to site plan. Other variance relief that would be required for site plan is a pool setback where 10 feet is required, but the existing pool is 7.6 feet, and that's not being relocated. A buffer variance, a 50-foot buffer is required. The additions, the canopy, parking areas, possibly the trash enclosure, although that's a moving target right now, and the existing driveway, the existing pool, and existing sheds are all located within the required buffer. There are no structures permitted in the buffer area, and there's structures both existing and proposed. And the buffer area should include a 4-season buffer of landscaping, fencing or walls that add up to 10 feet in high and berms of 6 feet in height. The site doesn't comply, but this is something that can be discussed further at site plan if we advance to that point. And then there's signage. No signage is permitted, and the applicant is proposing a ground-mounted sign out front. The area is limited to 4 square feet and 12 square feet is proposed, and a height of 4 feet is permitted and 5 feet is proposed. So it's my opinion that special reasons exist for the granting of the use variance, and that the variance can be granted without detriment to the surrounding properties or to the zone plan or the master plan. Now, special reasons exist for the granting of the requested D2 variance to expand this pre-existing non-conforming use. Now, usually when we're looking at a D2 variance, we look at that Burbridge case, where the board said that things such as a special reasons concept, when it's applied to an expansion of an existing non-conforming use, we have things like the appearance, the aesthetics, the compatibility of the use with the surrounding neighborhood become uniquely significant, especially if there's no evidence that the use will be discontinued. But in this case, the special reasons concept is satisfied because the use itself is inherently beneficial. Both child care centers, which is the existing use on the site, and solar facilities, which is proposed on top of the canopy, are specifically included in the municipal land use laws definition of inherently beneficial use. So the pre-existing non-conforming child care center is being expanded by way of 2 interior additions, the canopy with solar facilities on top and a pole barn with an outdoor play area. A site plan proposed to expand the use in a manner It proposes to expand the use in a manner which improves its function and its efficiency in a couple of ways. The first is an increase in the number of parking spaces to meet the needs of the current staff and provide visitor parking for use by customers. The second is to improve spaces serving the children who come to this center. They provide shade over the infant playground that currently exists, providing storage for and space for outdoor activities in and around the pole barn, and new equipment to support the camp and after school programs, providing a new ADA accessible bathroom in close proximity to the toddler group, which is at an age where they are toilet training, and close proximity is of great importance, as any parent who has been through that knows. Providing for new classrooms to allow for infants to be cared for separated from the older toddlers. Now, adding a renewable source of energy to the facility, which is itself advancing purpose N of the MLUL to promote the utilization of renewable energy resources, is an additional benefit. And we're providing for an enclosure for the existing trash containers, which is an aesthetic improvement to the site. So all of that combined satisfies, in my opinion, the special reasons concept for expanding this pre-existing non-conforming use. Now, this expansion can be accomplished without adding any detriment to the property. The proposed additions, both the interior and exterior, do not increase the intensity of activity on the site. The child care center is licensed for 52 children maximum present at any time, and the proposed additions do not increase the maximum limit on the license. The child care center has 12 total employees with 8 present on any one shift, and the proposed additions do not increase this. The expansion as it's proposed will therefore not increase traffic or noise associated with the use, and there's no detrimental aesthetic impact to the expansion. The additions are far enough from the roadway as to be unnoticeable, and the outdoor spaces are all screened from the roadway by the building. Now, I know we're not going to be voting on the bulk variances tonight, but again, I want to address them as though we are, since they are subsumed within that variance. So if we come back for site plan, this is the site plan we would be starting with. The proposed increase in coverage is necessary to provide for the expanded outdoor facilities, the additions, and increase in parking. And this relief is subsumed within the D2 variance to expand the use. There are a number of existing nonconformities for this facility, which include impervious coverage, the pool setback, and the intrusions into the buffer and a lack of berming and landscaping within the buffer. And the new setbacks and buffering variance are due to the locations of the existing features on the site. The proposed canopy, which requires side yard setback relief and buffer variances, is over an existing play area, which is located within the side yard and buffer area. The new building intrusions into the buffer are due to the building additions being located in the most logical place for the internal flow of the building. That bathroom is needed near the toddler space rather than having them go to the opposite end of the building. And the infant room is appropriately located near the younger toddler spaces. The proposed new parking is an expansion of the existing parking facility, which is located within a required buffer. The proposed freestanding signs in this case is a new variance that we introduced to the site, but it's absolutely necessary for site identification. At present, there is no identification of the site, which is necessary for safety. So I'm sure the board is aware your fire department really does like clear signage identifying sites for emergency vehicles. And I think this becomes of greater importance when we're talking about a child care center. So in total, these variances would advance several purposes of the municipal land use law. Purpose A, by promoting the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Purpose G, by providing sufficient space in an appropriate location for this use. And purpose N, by promoting utilization of renewable energy resources, and there's no detriment that would be associated with them. The total of this expansion proposed is modest relative to the size of the facility and the size of the lot. The intrusions into the buffer are consistent with the existing conditions. And the proposed variances would not substantially impair the intent and purpose of your master plan or zoning ordinance. In this case, the child care center is a pre-existing non-conforming use, and the expansion of the use as proposed improves its function in a manner that doesn't impair the zoning plan to any great extent. So for those reasons, it's my opinion that the variances can be granted. The special reasons are there to support them without detriment to the health, safety, and general welfare of the public, and the application would result in an improvement of the site in a manner which would not impair the intent and purpose of your master plan and development ordinance.
Allison, with regard to the special reasons concept in the Burbage case, a new wrinkle has been presented tonight with regard to the trash enclosure. So moving that out of its location would enhance support for the D2 with regard to appearance, aesthetics, and compatibility, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Allison. Nothing further.
Jennifer.
I take no exception to the testimony provided. I agree with the assessment of the existing use and the proposed improvements. While, seem like a lot, they're really modest in nature and intend to improve the utilization of this child care center, which is, as Ms. Coffin had indicated, an inherently beneficial use. So I don't take any exception to that. And I do agree that by maintaining the 52 person limit or 52 child limit on the license, no increase in employees after these improvements are installed, and the aesthetic benefit of some relocations, to me, there are no negative impacts associated with those items. I really do think that the devil is in the details, which lends itself more towards an evaluation of the site plan. I think that this use, as Ms. Coffin indicated, is inherently beneficial, and these improvements are a benefit to that. So I would agree with the testimony as provided and would take no exception if the board acted favorably on the application.
Thank you.
Charlie,
Nothing further, Mr. Chair.
okay. Board members, do y'all have any questions of Ms. Coffin?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have a question for Jen.
Okay.
So Jen, are we saying that there's no opportunity for increased intensity use at this location? Should we look favorably upon this first cut?
So my interpretation of the testimony provided, and Mr. Toto, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was that they had indicated that their current license allows up to 52 children on site, and they're going to maintain that limit with this improvement. Should at any point in the future they look to expand that beyond the existing 52 children, they would have to come back to you for further approval. So at this time, these improvements, in my understanding, were to better serve the existing population. And I understand that, you know, it's fluid. It's not the same 52 kids all the time, that some age out and go to kindergarten, others are born and come into the infant room. So I do understand the fluidity of that aspect of it, but that the license allows for 52 and the testimony is presented, for 52. So there is no intensification with the proposal in terms of the use itself. It's just a better program, like an internal program that better serves the existing children that utilize the property. Is that a fair assessment, Mr. Toto?
I concur, Jen, you're spot on. Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself. Yeah, you got it
Okay.
right.
And then, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I got a question for Charlie. So Charlie?
Yep.
Should we look favorably on this first cut? Are the improvements beneficial to the residents within the area? The aesthetics, the changing of the parking location, the moving of the dumpster. Talk to me.
Yeah, so certainly moving the dumpster to the back of the yard is going to improve it from a visual aesthetic perspective from West Farms Road. I think with a lot of these improvements, like with expanding the parking for the existing site usage, looking at the aerial and looking at Street View, you can see that there are areas in the grass in the area of proposed parking where people are currently parking. So they're proposing to expand the asphalt to accommodate that already existing condition. So that's certainly going to benefit the applicant. I think the big part of, once this comes back for site plan, benefit to the adjacent neighbors and things like that are, the amount of buffering, the location of buffering, where it's proposed, and how that's screening the use from the adjacent properties. And then also, the biggest thing from my perspective is stormwater management. And, Mr. Siv's going to be required to provide, stormwater management infrastructure, dry wells, to a certain level that I feel comfortable with this not having any detrimental impact from a stormwater management perspective. We're well below this of being any threshold of a major development and stormwater management basins or anything like that. But, certainly dry wells, to compensate for any additional impervious area, not just roof area, but the parking areas, I think will go a long way in easing those concerns to adjacent properties and the surrounding area.
So then, Charlie, the site is large enough to accommodate this expansion?
Really, they're asking for relief of, some of the buffers and things like that. But it's a lot of areas where they are already in the buffers and where activities are already occurring. In my eyes, and Jen can test, put some, info on this too. It's going to be improving the condition and legalizing the condition that has been ongoing on this site, with this future site plan application.
Okay.
And to Charlie's, I'm becoming a stormwater expert just listening to him talk about it all the time. But, the coverage, and probably with these bus spaces, the coverage is going to increase a little bit as well. But the applicant has indicated that they're willing to put in dry walls to mitigate that issue. So, I agree with Charlie. I think the site is large enough to accommodate these changes.
That's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, also, Mr. Saya, the Voyagers whenever they came before the board, some of the stuff was cleared up at that point in time as far as variance was issued. Like I believe there was a variance issued for the swimming pool being in the setback. You know, you would have to look at the previous resolution to see that, but you know, basically, whenever they come back for site plan, we're going to address, you know, all of that at that point in time. You know, if it's favorable, you know, we'll look at it at site plan. But a lot of the stuff that is in the setbacks now, that was part of the resolution prior to, you know, when the Voyagers came in, and that a lot of it was addressed at that point in time. Is there anything else from the board members? Okay. At this time, I'll take a motion to open to public.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Mr. Hughes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Mertens. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none. Okay, Eileen, we'll open to public for questions and comments of the applicants, professionals, or the applicant.
Okay, at this time, the chairman has opened the hearing up for members of the public. You will need access to audio and video. You will be sworn in, and you will need to give your name and address, and that is for questions or comments regarding this application. I have a D. Layton, who is going to be moved into the meeting.
Hello?
We can hear you, but we can't see you. Do you have video?
Yes, I can see you, but I'm trying to figure out what do I need to do here?
There's a little camera at the bottom left of your screen that
Share video.
video.
Not share video.
Share video?
Not yet.
I'm trying. It's not working. Stop
No,
video.
it should be on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, on your computer screen. You've got a mic. There's a mic there, and then there's a little camera there.
Figure this out. I see the camera. Hey, we're front camera. Start my video. Are we there?
No, not yet. Nope.
I'm sorry. This is all new to me. Believe me. DJ, what's the problem here?
Sure. Just make sure the camera on the computer is not covered with something.
Yeah, it's not. I'm looking at it. I see you. Select the camera, front camera. Select on the
There
front
you
camera.
go.
There you go.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Layton. I'm Ron Tropley, the board attorney. So what we're going to do is swear you in. I'm going to ask for your address, and then you can proceed with your questions for the applicant's witnesses, okay?
Okay.
All right, raise your right hand. Swear the testimony you'll give this evening be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Okay, name and address, please, for the record.
Darrell Layton, 14 Alaska Avenue, Jackson, Jersey. Owner of lot 14 next door, easterly side of Home Sweet Home. Now, I don't particularly have any questions for anyone. I just have a bunch of issues that I'd like to get some answers to. I guess they're questions. The biggest problem I have is the stormwater problems that we have. We always have flooding from over there. It comes across their driveway. I have some pictures from the storm last week of the driveway flooded where the buses are parked, and it's a muddy mess, and it flows across the field. I'm going to say about 10 years ago, when it was owned by the Voyager School, in a typical rainstorm, heavy rainstorm, their oil tank flooded my farm, qualified farm, and had to do an environmental cleanup. So we've had ongoing water on a continuous basis. You know, we have been dealing with it. At this point, they're looking to intensify that. The impervious area is almost doubling with no retention basin in the drawings or anything. If you look at the plans that I got, it shows you're about 8 foot on the right side of their lot. It drops about 8 foot and all comes onto my property. Now we grow vegetables there and we have some fruit trees there, and we've lost all the fruit trees. I don't know why, but that's just one of the issues there. Besides the cleanup. But I mean, my biggest thing is the water that comes across their parking lot. They're going to try and increase the size of the parking without retaining the water. I mean, they're trying to intensify a non-conforming commercial entity in an AR2 zone. And we are a qualified farm, and a qualified farm, there's a 50-foot buffer zone where there's, let's see, there is to be no structure, activity, storage of material, or parking of vehicles. Now, I understand there is some existing construction, but most of the new construction is going to try and take place in the 50-foot farm buffer zone. So I see that they did address some issues, which was the trash. The trash we've had an issue with since the previous owners. It blows into my farm all the time. They don't bag their trash. Everything's thrown in the dumpster loose. So I'm usually picking up trash with a stick with a nail in it, and that's what I do. Let's see. Trash was a problem. Go ahead.
Wright,
Yes.
Okay, lot 14, is that your only lot that you have?
We have lot 14 and the next lot also. I think that's 15. I don't have,
How many total acres are you?
It's 14 and 15.
yes.
Wendell?
6 acres and change.
Okay.
So, all right.
That's what, and you are a Q farm, right?
Yes, we are. And I mean, if you look at the,
The tax map, Wendell doesn't show it, but the tax records show it.
Yeah,
Right.
I know.
Yeah.
so that's one of our issues. I mean, there's not supposed to be any activity in the buffer zone. I mean, they've got 3 buses and they all park there in the buffer zone. I don't see that how they can get any construction done in a qualified farm buffer zone. I mean, I can understand putting an addition on, even though it's qualifying, but maybe try and do the construction on the other side of the building where it's not going to affect the buffer zone. At this point, they're looking to put their building within 15 foot of my property line.
Mr. Layton,
Yes.
how long have you been a qualified farm?
I don't have that exact date on me. We've farmed that property family for 100 years.
Okay.
I don't know when I mean, I'm sure I could find it out. I didn't have enough time to get that, but we've been there.
It's been a qualified farm for 10 plus years.
There you go. You have the info. Thank you. So let's see, what else did we have? They already addressed the trash. By moving it to the other side, it's going to, at least when the trash blows out of their dumpster, it'll be in front of their place and they may not get it all. It just surprises me that they want to try and put, any kind of construction in the buffer zone where you're supposed to have 50-foot buffer. They only have 30. Now they're proposing getting it down to 15. But the water is the biggest problem I have from that site. Obviously, I'm downhill from there, and I know how gravity works. But, like you said, they require berms and plantings and stuff. Something should be done to keep the water off of my property. I mean, I have to cut the grass, and we have tractors, and we have a lot of water at times. We have our own water, but we also get all of their water. Obviously, there's some pre-existing conditions like the pool and the canopy, and that stuff's all been there. And I haven't had a problem with that, but now that I've had to figure out what's allowed and what's not allowed, I think that the laws are there for a reason. Why are they qualifying for a buffer zone? We did have a tree break off in on our side of the property back when the hurricane went through, and it fell into their pool. But if the pool wasn't there, that tree wouldn't have damaged anything. Obviously, it's there. So there was an insurance thing with that. But where they're proposing to put that canopy, 50 years ago, 45 years ago, we planted a whole buffer for the first 60 feet of trees. They're 50 foot tall, pine trees. That's a buffer we put in because there was no existing buffer. Now they're proposing to put solar panels and a canopy in that area. I don't see that that makes any sense to me. They do have a large size site. They have other areas that they could put that. I thought maybe they could put the solar panels on the roof of the existing building and it wouldn't increase the impervious areas. Now they're looking at adding more parking for the buses now, and they can't park them in a buffer zone according to the 6A of the land use. Let's see. Salt water, pool. All right, there's another issue with the pool discharge. They discharge their pool water backwash, and it ends up on my property because their pool is 7'6" from their property line. That's something that's visible and obvious if you go there. I haven't complained about that. It's been like that forever. But at this point, they're trying to intensify the non-conforming use. I guess we have to, you know, bring it up, bring it to your attention. I'm sorry, we're looking for some. And they address the sign. I know the sign's not allowed there. It's a residential area, and the sign on the street I think would change the look of the residential area. So they already addressed that by putting the sign in the building, and that's, if that works out, that'll be fine also. But like I said, my main problem was the storm water runoff, and they're not proposing any remedy for that. I don't know if what'd you call them, discharge wells is going to handle the parking lot rain, because that's where most of the water comes from. When the oil tank flooded, it came across the back of their building under their canopy in between the pool, and it came down that area, and then we had to have an environmental cleanup, and that was the previous owners. So I don't want to see any repeat of this. I know they have an above ground oil tank that they've taken care of, and that's, you know, that's a lot safer than what they had originally. But I don't want to see any of this. They use salts and whatever calcium they do to de-ice. That's going into the area. One of the main areas I farmed for our personal use vegetables is directly adjacent to where they're putting this addition. It's a fenced-in area. That's where we farm for personal use. I also do honeybees, but that's on the other side of the property. I'm just trying to continue to be a qualified farm. I mean, I have the right to farm, and I wish to farm. I just don't want to have all these extra chemicals or whatever, parking lot wash over, stuff like that. But I mean, it is a 50-foot buffer zone, and I realize that they made that stipulation for a reason. You know, and I'm pretty certain that they had to be notified when they purchased this place in 15. You know, it's just something that I think they would have known. I know that the Reynolds wanted to do some, they were the previous owner, they wanted to do some improvements and stuff, and they realized that they weren't allowed to do it because of the lot size and the area that they are in. So I don't know if Ms. Camperell was aware of that. We didn't have any issues with them except for the cleanup, and I'm not the kind of guy to go sue because, you know, we just had them clean it up and we were made whole, I hope. And, you know, I like to farm. It's my peace of mind, and I want to continue to do it. I don't want to be deterred or, you know, have any problems with that.
Okay, sir.
I'm sorry.
Okay, we've heard everything you have said. You know, Mr. Toto, do you want to?
Yeah, I have a few questions, and maybe I'll direct some things to my professionals. So, Mr. Layton, good evening. So
yes,
your biggest concern is the water runoff, correct?
That's the first and major concern. That's the first thing. You know, since the oil tank.
Fair enough. So let me go to the buses first. So we're going to remove the buses from the buffer zone.
Excellent.
That's not going to be happening there. With regard to the water, and I'll direct this to my my engineer, Mr. Siv. Rob, between what we have now and what we're proposing with regard to the water runoff, what is the better situation? Can you describe that? I mean, I know that's a site plan issue, but to address Mr. Layton's concerns about stormwater management, can we make it a better situation than what exists out there today, assuming what he says is accurate?
Yeah, just to circle back for a second, as I indicated earlier, the existing impervious coverage is about 24.5%. Proposed as the plan is prepared now, obviously it'll increase a little bit, but is about, I'll call it 29%. So it's an increase of about 4%, give or take. And that's our increase that we're proposing at the moment for the impervious coverage. The site has no stormwater management at the moment. So any stormwater management that we propose and that we've agreed to do as part of site plan review would improve the stormwater management and stormwater runoff that the site currently doesn't have.
With regard to capturing the water generated or that flows from our site, caused by our site, by our impervious into, going easterly into Mr. Layton's property, can we capture, how much can we capture of the runoff? I guess that's my question.
Until we actually do the site grading and whatnot, it's hard to give you a percentage, but obviously we'll capture more than what's being captured at the moment. So it'll be positive.
So it'll be a better situation.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Layton, the question about the oil tank situation, was
Yes.
there a remedial action outcome with regard to the DEP on that? Was there?
Yes, it was a good size cleanup. They removed soil in their yard, they removed soil in my yard, brought new soil in, we lost some trees. The extent of the oil was all the way across my property, but I had pictures of it and I don't have them anymore, but they clean up and they came and tested it. And they only did a small cleanup where our garden is in the buffer zone there. So,
Okay, so you said that it's a safer situation now with regard to the oil tank. I imagine that's a product of what the DEP demanded from
Yes.
Voyagers at that time?
yes.
So we can imagine that that Voyagers ultimately had to comply with the DEP as it relates to that tank, right?
Yes, I feel the tank is no longer a problem. It's an above ground tank, unless you had some a problem filling or something, which does happen time to time, but it's on site.
And with regard to the trash enclosure, we are removing it from that area, certainly. So
Which is good, because it is the buffer zone and the trash on my property is just, I walk over there with I got one of those garbage pickup sticks and I pick it up. But
I think what I'm proposing is a better situation than what exists.
Yes.
That's an improvement as well.
Yes, it would be.
All right, Mr. Layton, I have nothing further. I appreciate your comments. And that's all I have, Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay. Eileen, is that all you have, Mr. Layton?
At this point, we pretty much, you guys pretty much with everything. I mean, at this point, it's a 15% impervious area is allowed, and they're going to be at 29%. So I could see that they're going to possibly handle the water from the parking lot, but what about the rest of the area? They're talking about putting pavers next to the building. I just don't think that there should be any type of construction in a buffer zone. There is some existing there already. That's there. That's nothing, we're not looking to have them remove the pool or anything. We're just trying not to intensify the floodwaters on my area and not to impede my style, my life. We're a 50-foot buffer. We're a 50-foot buffer. There's certain things I have to do to stay a qualified farm, and there's certain things other people have to do to be neighbors with a qualified farm.
Yep.
At this point, I don't know what else to add. I think we've got everything. It's all been recorded, correct?
Yes, sir.
So I think at this point we're okay with that. I just wanted to, say again, what this says here is 6A is there's no structure, activity, storage, or parking in a 50-foot buffer zone for the farm assessment. I mean, I don't think we need to say too much more than that.
I agree.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Eileen, do we have anybody else?
Yes, I have Jerry Brinkman, who I just brought into the meeting.
Mute yourself.
Jerry?
Brinkman,
I don't know. I don't care.
there you go.
Right, Mr. Layton, can you mute yourself, please?
Mute.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Brinkman, can you unmute, please?
Are you muted?
I believe.
Mr. Brinkman. At the bottom of your screen,
Mr. Layton, you had yourself muted and you unmuted.
Sorry, we'll try.
All right,
there you
now
go.
you're muted.
Just there like that. Okay, Mr. Brinkman, I don't know, you can probably hear us, but you're muted.
Okay. There you go.
Very good, all right.
There we go.
Okay, I'm gonna swear you in, sir, and give us your name, your address, and
Actually,
you
there
can
are
proceed.
There are
Okay.
two of us here. It's Jerry Brinkman and Maria Brinkman. We live at 57 Richard Road.
Okay, before you go, sir, if both of you are gonna speak, I need to swear both of you in, okay? Sure, raise your right hands, please. Right, you swear the testimony you give tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and that was Jerry and Maria?
Yes.
And your address again, please?
57 Richard.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Do you have any questions or comments for the applicant?
Yeah, I have no questions. I think most of them were answered, but I just have a couple of concerns I have, and it's regarding the noise. So we've been in this house 24 years, and it's basically, we moved into this area because it was a quiet and peaceful neighborhood. And what I've noticed over the past 3 to 4 years is that the level of noise coming from the school has increased in volume and intensity. Last summer, I would say, was probably the worst level of noise. Both of us are retired now, so I spend most of my time outside. If it's a nice day, I'm usually outside. And in all honesty, it's got to the point of being annoying, the noise from the school, usually between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, I was there outside today. It was pretty quiet, but during the summer camps, it's getting annoying. I mean, we're having problems enjoying our patio and our pool now because of the amount of noise that comes from the school. I mean, that's my main concern and objection.
Okay. Maria, do you have a comment?
Something about the aesthetics of since this is a property area 2 is a rural area, and I like rural. I don't like too many developments, and that they are going to, since that you know, our property backs up with the south side of their property. So we'll be having a pole barn that is a monstrous thing, is ugly, is not a nice thing. Over there, that we are looking at our backyard, we go onto our backyard and we will look at a monstrous barn pole that I don't think that is a nice thing. I want to make sure that the distance is 50 feet. Are they going to put 50 feet or is it going to be more than 50 feet? Are they going to put for season planting? Are they going to put season planting? It's because after a while it becomes really ugly, aesthetically ugly and busy. I mean, children are very nice and things like that, but they are as well noisy. And they need to laugh and they need to scream and things like that. And we want peaceful and quiet. That's why we chose this area. Okay. We want to maintain the area as it is. We don't want construction, and is ugly. Honestly, for me, a pole barn is an ugly sight. It's not a nice construction. It's a pole barn.
Yes, and I'd just like to take up a point that Mr. Layton said, that, you know, this is a residential area. This is why people moved into this area. We don't want anything except residential and farms in this area. So we don't want to be taken away from the characteristics of why we moved here. We moved into Farmingdale from Howell because it is a quiet residential farming community, not an industrial or commercial type of environment. So, I mean, that's my biggest objection is noise, and let's keep Farmingdale what Farmingdale was.
Chairman, I have a question or two of Mr. Brinkman.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Good evening. When did you purchase your home?
1997.
Do you know when it was built?
86.
In
Plus or minus,
86.
I believe it was 86.
And do you know what was at the site when you purchased your home?
At us, at which side?
The subject property, that, the Home Sweet Home
I believe
daycare
it was
facility.
Voyager at that point.
Okay. So did they conduct outside activities at Voyager?
They were pretty quiet compared to what it is now. They were pretty quiet.
Okay, but it was a school, correct?
Correct.
Did Voyager provide any buffering between their use and your property line?
There is no buffering. There never has been, and there still is no buffering there.
Okay, so let me speak to my engineer about that. Rob, with regard to the two questions, and Mr. Brinkman raised, or Ms. Brinkman raised about the location of the pole barn. How many feet from the common property line of the rear would the pole barn be?
I believe the Brinkman's property is the rear lot line of common with our subject property.
Yeah.
And we would be 55 feet from the rear property line.
And with regard, listen, again, I know it's a site plan issue, but can we assuage the Brinkman's concerns with regard to at least increasing the landscaping within that buffer or enhancing the landscaping to not only perhaps block the view of the pole barn to some extent, but also to attenuate the noise? Are there species available in that regard that we can install in that area?
Yes, there's landscaping that can be done to enhance and provide a buffer.
And it would be all season, like something along the ways of evergreens, et cetera, that would not lose their leaves in the winter months, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
May I say something?
Yes.
Since the pole barn is going to be so high, 15 feet, you need to have trees that they need to grow. Are they going to bring the trees already grown 15 feet, or are we going to wait for 10 or 15 years until they grow for 15 feet?
Well, Rob, is there an existing buffer right now?
I believe there are some existing trees in that location along that rear property line, and we can propose trees to interfill or fill in those gaps that are there now.
Mr. Chair, I would really suggest that this level of detail conversation be deferred to site plan when we have an actual landscaping plan. They've worked with the certified tree expert. I'm not trying to to basically discourage your comments. I think they're excellent comments, and I think the applicant needs to hear them. But the board has an actual certified tree expert that works with the board on all landscaping matters, and the landscaping for this application is being deferred to the next step. So I think it's important that the board hears this, but like the level of detail on the planting height and the specific species, I think should be deferred. So site plan, when we have an actual landscaping plan and Shari has been brought into the fold.
I agree.
May I ask something? Would they really cover the height of the barn, or would they decrease the barn height for 10 feet? Do you understand?
Yeah, I do. So the height of the pole barn is 15 feet. So we're not talking about a 60 or 70 foot structure, but I'm not going to opine on the planting height because that falls under Shari's jurisdiction, and we would deal with that at site plan. I don't necessarily know that the plants are going to be 15 to 20 feet when they're planted, because the larger the species, the less likely that they are to survive. But this is all these questions and all this interaction is something that should be done when they come for site plan with Shari Spiro, who's the board's tree expert. And she'll know all the species types, the planting size, the spacing, all of those details she handles on behalf of the board when we get to that step.
Yeah, this is Jerry Brinkman. I understand what you're saying, but I'm not quite sure. I'm not an acoustic engineer, so I'm not quite sure if that's going to reduce the amount of sound that's coming from the school. Especially,
I'm not sure either, but at the end of the day, the requirement in our ordinance is that it be set back 50 feet from the property line, which it is. So all we can do is, I mean, obviously the opening of that, I'm assuming, is not facing your property line. It's probably facing the front towards the actual building. But, you know, it is something that I asked for in my letter, Mr. Toto, where, you know, some kind of details of these types of structures, because we don't have any of that information.
Yes.
So that's stuff that we can work out. So do I think it's going to attenuate the noise 100%? I'm going to say no, because quite honestly, landscaping can only do so much.
Sure.
But it also is important that there will be a structure there now between like the play area and your property line, and a structure will attenuate the noise. And the testimony was provided that that building is going to be used for storage. So the building will be there, and that there, that will help to block noise from the property. But again, while I'm not trying to dismiss your concerns, I think they're perfectly legitimate. They're not at that point yet. These are detailed information that we would come out at a site plan application, which is the next step for them.
But also, Jennifer, I got to remind, you know, we do have noise ordinances.
Right, but the noise ordinance is to a sensitive receptor, and the trigger point is 10 p.m. So I'm guessing that these kids are not playing in the backyard at 10 p.m.
No.
So
The worst time is between approximately 1 o'clock and probably be 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, especially during the summer when we're both outside.
right, so those are not sensitive receptor times because it's in the middle of the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's also important to note, and I think Mr. Toto did discuss this briefly, the school is there. So whether the board approves the application or not, the school has the right to stay there, and the kids will be out in the backyard whether this is approved or not. It's not like they're introducing a new use to the site, and the threshold for that is a little bit higher than if they're expanding something that's already there. So while I agree, it is a residential area along West Farms Road. You know, the school has been there. The Voyager School was approved. I don't remember the year, Wendell, but I do think I was still on the board at the time. So what I would suggest is, and I'm not dismissing your concerns, I would just ask that you put a pin in it until, if the board acts favorably tonight and they come back, Shari will go out on the site. She'll look at all the species that are out there. She will make recommendations, not only with the number, the type, the size, how far away they be planted, what will create a big hedge, so she gets into that level of detail. She's just unfortunately not here tonight because they've deferred the landscaping to the site plan phase of this.
Walter, I just have a quick question, maybe clarifying for Maria with this sound issue too. So obviously this past year with COVID, there were certain restrictions on what kind of indoor activities could take place and capacities and things like that. So, did that have any impact on the site just for this past year, where it might have intensified outdoor activities, where those things might have typically occurred indoors during the summer season?
Good question. Maria, can you respond to that, please?
I mean, the noise is there.
No,
That's what
I'm
you
sorry. It's
Sorry,
very-
this is for the applicant. I apologize.
Maria, our Maria, the project Maria, Maria Howell. Maria, answer Charlie's question with regard to whether COVID had an impact on increasing the outdoor activities, particularly this summer, which Mr. Brinkman raised an issue about.
No. We're outside all the time. Between 12:30 and 2:30, all children under the age of 5 are napping between 12:30 and 2:30. So the majority are sleeping in the midday. Definitely at 1 o'clock, we're definitely in the pool with the older children, splashing around, having a good time. At the far end away from, I'm believing, Richard Road. They're playing, they're having a good time. Around 3 o'clock is when we get out of the pool. They're getting ready to go home, and 3:30 starts dismissal. So I actually had less children this summer, so I'm not quite sure what the difference is, to be honest with you, but we are outside as much as possible enjoying the fresh air.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Maria.
Mr. Brickman, you have any?
No, I think I've voiced my concerns.
Okay, sir, we thank you for your participation here. Eileen, do we have any other?
Yes, I have one more. Allison Shoemaker.
Yes, hello.
Okay, Allison, would you raise your right hand, please? And take an oath. You swear the testimony you'll give tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
And may we have your address, please?
Yes, my name is Allison Cooney. I live at 79 Casino Drive in Farmingdale.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you just spell your last name then, if it's not Shoemaker?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my maiden name. My last name is Cooney, Cooney.
Thank you.
So I would just like to speak on behalf of Home Sweet Home. We just had our first child in April, and I personally chose Home Sweet Home because of the outdoor environment. So I understand that it might be loud, but it's amazing to me that they have such a large space outside for the children to be able to play. A pool is absolutely amazing. They get swimming lessons in the summer. I think that there's so many positives to the outdoor activities that they have, and I really don't see any complaints to kids playing outside in the summer. But my one thing that I wanted to definitely emphasize was the expansion to the infant room. And I know that earlier there was a lot of talk about the capacity, the maximum capacity. And I would just like to say that the infant room, it's not that it's not large enough for the students. And I don't believe that Maria is expanding because she needs more space. She's expanding because of the development of the students. So having a 6-week-old and an almost 2-year-old in the same room, that's where the issue falls, is just developmentally. So I think that the expansion and the addition of the smaller infant room is absolutely the best. And then being able to have a door from a 1 to 2-year-old room and 2 to 3-year-old room for those kids to be able to have a bathroom right between their rooms would be absolutely the best thing ever. So that's all I really had to say. I think that the expansion is great, and I love the kids playing outside. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eileen, do we have any more?
I only have one other person on the call and their hand is not raised, so.
Okay. At this time, I'll take a motion to close public.
Motion to close, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Mr. Hughes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Mertens. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, professionals, do y'all have any further questions or comments?
None for me.
Just one last comment, Mr. Chair, hearing some of the concerns from the neighbors with the stormwater runoff. I think obviously, the applicant's engineer agreed that they could provide dry wells for the water quality storm. I'd like to see a site plan, maybe if we can accommodate something a little bit bigger than the water quality storm, especially since the neighbors have indicated that there are some issues with the existing site runoff as it is. It doesn't need to be a full stormwater management design major development, but maybe something a little bit more than a water quality storm. Rob, is that something you guys can work with?
Yeah, it's something we can definitely look at and we'll review together as part of the site plan process.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm not comfortable. I want a full site water management plan for that existing site. I mean, we have problems. There's runoff and there's no water management plan whatsoever. And here we're going from 24 to 29%. We're just going to add to the problem. Why don't we just solve it once and for all?
Charlie?
So, right now the site's at 24%. That's no change from what's existing out there. Really, it's a 4.5%, percent change that equates to almost 5,000 square feet of impervious. There's a potential that could change a little bit with some of the additional parking. For the applicant to say that there's no additional runoff to the adjacent properties, you'd have to put in something that would be able to handle and infiltrate the entire 100-year storm volume. That's considerably more than a drywall for the water quality storm. So this isn't a major development, so there's no requirement in our ordinance for attenuation and things like that. This is just, to address any increase in impervious runoff that's created with the current subject development. So,
could we require them to provide infiltration for the entirety of the 100-year storm? Yes. It's just at what point does that become, from a cost perspective, add up? And then also from a site perspective, where does that fit on the site with the septic system and the building additions and things of that nature?
But Charlie, how does that compare to us protecting the rights of the farming and a qualified farm? That's already violated its buffer ordinance.
Yeah, well,
so it's not so much the buffer that we're talking about here. We're talking about impervious cover, right? So they're 4.5% for a 2-acre site. That's almost 5,000 square feet of impervious area. So could they put an underground recharge system to infiltrate the entirety of the 100-year storm runoff for that new impervious area? Yes. And that would certainly say we're not contributing any runoff to the neighbors with this proposed development. But that's just a step above just dry wells for the water quality storm. So, in my eyes, that's certainly a way that you could say that there's no detrimental impact from a runoff perspective to the neighboring property. As far as the existing condition, there's no requirement. This isn't a major development for them to attenuate any of that existing runoff that's there on site. I mean, really, we'd be talking about just for the additional increase in impervious coverage that they'd be treating.
yeah, but Charlie, wouldn't it be behoove us to go back to prior resolutions and make sure it's in compliance to the prior resolutions first?
Yeah, we could certainly do that. Like I said, I just don't know, like looking back at the aerials, even past the prior 2013, I guess when Voyager was there, I don't know that there was a significant increase in impervious coverage at that time. A lot of this site has been built out for some time. And a lot of that may predate the current stormwater ordinance, from 2004. So, really, as far as the subject application right now with the increased impervious, the only way that you could really say that there's no detrimental impact is if they were to infiltrate, the entirety of the 100-year storm, as I see it. But, that's from a financial perspective, and then also from a site plan location, we need to see details on where all that stuff goes. And, obviously it can't go in a buffer and it can't be, within certain proximity to the septic. So can it be done? Yes. It's just a matter of cost and location.
For all times for Matt to be absent tonight.
Charlie?
I know, just going back to the history, I know there was an approval in 1988 for the Monmouth County Association for Children and Adults with Learning Disabilities. I know that there was a preliminary and final site plan granted at that time. I don't have a copy of those plans, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, but
that would be the one that the Voyager came in would be the one that you would have to go back to, because that was the latest, variance plan that came in. I think they came in for some sort of octagon type tent. Kurt, or whatever.
I think back then. Yeah, I don't see any. Mr. Chairman, I agree. But there were temporary approvals given to Voyagers in 2013.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. But the temporary was there until they came in for. They were going to do an expansion.
Yeah,
I recall it. Yeah, and they never came back.
They withdrew that application.
Exactly. That's what I was saying. So we're
yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, just looking back at the Google Earth aerials, the pool, the patio behind the building itself, the parking area, that doesn't look like it has changed substantially since 2002, and that all predates the current stormwater management ordinance. Now, assuming that was all put in with prior site plan approvals and there was no stormwater management required at the time, there's nothing as far as the current development with those existing improvements that I don't think the applicant would necessarily be required to address. However, the additional impervious coverage, that additional, 4.5%, the applicant certainly can go above just dry wells for the water quality storm. They can do something more extensive, from a stormwater management perspective during site plan.
Charlie,
and I think that's kind of what Mr. Say is going towards.
Yeah.
I don't agree. If Mr. Layton has runoff and he's downstream and it's affecting his farming operation, based on the existing coverage of the adjacent property, and he's a qualified farm operator, we have an obligation to remediate that condition, not add to it.
You know, like I said, I don't know the full history of the land use approvals, Mr. Saya, but you know, that's something we'd have to look at. I'm just going based off of aerials that I'm looking at the site. If the applicant or the prior owner came through and got prior land use approvals for everything that's on the site, and you know, if they got a waiver for stormwater management or it wasn't required because the ordinance that was in place at the time didn't require it, you know, for no change to those existing improvements to make them provide stormwater management for that, you know, I think is something that, you know, is a little bit burdensome. However, for like any new impervious coverage that's proposed with its application, certainly the applicant, if the board wanted to make them detain and infiltrate that entire runoff for the 100-year storm, they can certainly do that. You know, and that's something we can have them do as site plan. But for the stuff that's existed on site, at least from what I can see from 2002, if that is all legally existing from prior site plan approvals, you know, they're not changing anything with this application. It's just the building addition, the parking area expansion, the pole barn in the back. Those are the subject of, you know, the increase in impervious coverage with this application.
I mean, I would defer to Ron. Ron, if the improvements are in place in 2002, which predates the stormwater management rules in 2004, and they don't have an acre of disturbance or a quarter acre of new impervious, do we even have the ability to impose these standards because there is an existing issue? I mean, it's a regulatory question,
Right.
so I guess it would be more of a legal question.
Right.
I mean, you could engineer, I mean, no offense, Charlie, but we could engineer the drainage if we really needed to, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
no,
whether or
no,
not they're obligated to do it.
It's certainly, yeah. I mean, and that's kind of where I was trying to go with it, you know. And like I said, I'm looking at aerials. I don't have a site plan.
So listen, wait a second. Here, you know, you guys, here's what I'm hearing. You're saying, okay, we got a regulatory issue, perhaps, that we're not required to go back and remediate. Well, what about this application that's in front of us right now?
Well, that's what Charlie's saying. He's saying the increase over what's existing out there today to what they're ultimately proposing is something that they're going to accommodate.
Right.
But to go back to something that occurred before the regulations were in place,
2004.
I don't think we can do it. I don't think we have the authority. But what, from what's there today to what is being proposed with their site plan, I think based upon what we're hearing, and Mr. Toto, this is directed kind of at you, we're going to be expecting some kind of stormwater mitigation for the increase in the pavement from existing to what you're proposing.
No, actually, Jennifer, they're here for a use variance. If they've got an existing condition that's affecting the neighbors, we need to correct it now. They're asking for a use variance. And
I agree, Wendell, but we can't go backwards from what was done in 2002. We don't have the legal authority to do that. So if they've already stated on the record multiple times that they're going to deal with the drainage from existing what's there today to what they're proposing, the increase. So that is going to be dealt with at site plan. We don't have the ability, because let's be honest, let's say you guys say no to the use variance. They don't have to do anything. The existing condition is the existing condition. So what we're dealing with is what the increase is from what they're proposing now to what they had existing yesterday. But we can't go backwards prior to the drainage requirements. I know it's frustrating, but at the end of the day, our hands are tied. The law says what it is, and I understand there's concerns. So what they're saying is it going to solve the problem? Probably not. Is it going to make the problem worse? If they catch whatever increase in impervious coverage between yesterday and whatever they're going to propose, in theory, they shouldn't make the situation any worse than it is today. But it is absolutely not their obligation to solve a problem that started 20 years ago before the drainage rules were in place. We do not have, I know it's frustrating, but we don't have the authority to do it.
But I would just add that we
Mr.
can.
Saya, I just want to say to you, your point's well taken, but what you have today is a site that has been substantially developed before 2004, before the imposition of the stormwater regulations. I agree with what Jen's saying. with regard to their willingness to mitigate the 5,000 square feet increase in impervious coverage. What do we have today? If this board were to deny the use variance, you have heard from three people, well, two people actually, their concerns, flooding and noise. There has been a representation by the applicant's attorney that they would be willing to mitigate the noise, to impose a four-season buffer where it's required. They will be relocating the pole barn, and they're willing to work the drainage out to whatever extent the 5,000 square feet can be mitigated. And I would suspect that Charlie will work with Rob on this project. So if the board does nothing, then the conditions which are legal and long-standing conditions are going to continue. The flooding will continue. The lack of a noise abatement will continue. And again, I'm not speaking for the applicant. I'm just trying to state the obvious here, in my opinion. And again, I'm not a voting member, but to leave the site the way it is not going to benefit the neighbors. And I think the board has substantial control in a use variance setting to impose conditions which would be beneficial and alleviate some of the problems to the neighbors. And that's basically what I want to say. But as far as going backwards in time to try to rectify what has been permitted is not something that I think this board can do. But I have great faith in Charlie working with the engineer to mitigate with Jen, and Sherry working out buffering. Again, which nothing is there. This is a site that's not controlled in any sense of the word by way of stormwater management. This is an opportunity for the board, I think, to essentially, I don't want to say right or wrong, but to make a better situation from a situation that has been clearly demonstrated by the neighbors. And
Mr. Tropoli.
that's pretty much all I could say.
Mr. Tropoli, I hear you. Here's what I'm hearing. You're saying if we add 5,000 and we mitigate 5,000, the existing condition is still going to exist. And that's what you're all saying. That's what Jen's saying. That's what Charlie's saying. And that's what I'm hearing from you. And that's what's frustrating me the most. I want to hear from the applicant. I want to hear that the applicant's going to go move forward and they're going to do their darnest for a recharge and make sure that Mr. Layton is not being flooded with, the site that we're making a potential increase in pervious surface on.
Sure, and we're willing to go beyond the 5,000 square feet of attenuation. I don't know that we can capture everything, Vice Chairman Saya, but we can go beyond what we're already talking about here tonight. I think beyond the 5,000, and work with Rob Siv, our project engineer, and Charlie to do better than just attenuate the 5,000. I can't guarantee no runoff, but it doesn't sound like Mr. Layton's ever lost his farmland assessment. Listen, no one wants to get flooded out. I know farming a little bit. In fact, a family has farmed for a long time as well. We don't want that situation to exist, and we're willing to attenuate that. Absolutely, as a good neighbor. And we can work towards that with the board engineer at site plan in particular.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to push this vote until we do more due diligence, until we have a better warm and comfy of where we're going.
Okay. I hear what you're saying, Paul, but I want to, they're here for use. Either we vote for it or we vote it down. One or the other. That's what we're here for. Mr. Hughes.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this sort of kind of piggybacks on Mr. Saya's thing. I just want to get your guidance because we're making this decision on the farmland buffer issue. Is this something that we would push to compliance in the next step, or is this something that we should consider?
There's really no push to compliance because it's already a pre-existing non-conforming.
Well, they're going further into it. I know they're 35 foot now, but they're going further into it.
No,
Is this something?
They're less than 35 into the farmland. There's the pool is 7 feet from the farmland buffer.
But I'm sorry, sir. Isn't there some construction that's going to go further into it?
Well,
the pool is the closest thing to the property line, the pool.
Okay.
The only thing that's going out in that direction, once we relocate the trash enclosure and the bus parking, is the solar canopy, but I think the testimony was that it's over the existing children's play area. It's not extending farther into that area than the improvements that are now, and that the buffering and the landscaping and the drainage are something that would be handled, or this is what the applicants requested to be handled at site plan. So it's not compliance because they have to come back to get site plan approval. So that's, I think, what the request is. It's just to expand the use, and the site plan would follow if you guys voted yes, which would include the landscaping in the rear along Mr. Brinkman's property line to help try to attenuate the noise, as well as like where I'm going to be looking for, you know, some increased landscaping on that coincident property line with Mr. Layton. All those details would be presented for your consideration at that time.
No, I understand that, but like the addition of the expanding the bathroom and all that's not going further into the farmland?
Yes,
Is that?
it is. Yes, it is.
Well, that's my question.
So is the proposed canopy expansion.
Well, that's what I said, the canopy, yeah.
Huh?
The
Okay,
canopy, yeah.
So that was just my question.
So is the bathroom.
Yeah,
The
well, that's my
bathrooms
question.
The new proposed will be 37.43
Or 3 feet.
You know, so you're 18 feet in there, right there. The bottom section of the classroom addition is 41, you know, so you're 9 feet encroaching more.
Yep.
Well, that was my question, because I know how you are, Mr. Chairman, with the farmland buffers. I just wanted to get your opinion on that, if I may, please.
Yes. You know,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
what are the specific parts of this new proposal that add to the impervious coverage?
Well, you got the canopy extension, you got the classroom addition. you got
I
the
would
bathroom
ask,
addition.
why don't we have Mr. Siv answer that? Because I think the canopy's over the existing play area that's already impervious.
It's a proposed extension.
It's just
It
a
does-
roof over an existing area, but let's let him go through the plan.
Okay, I agree, Jennifer, but if you look back, that area for that playroom was under a temporary permit from 2000, you know, whatever they were before the board. They never came back. They withdrew the application that they were gonna come back for the expansion. You know, they withdrew that. That area right there is where that Turk was, or whatever that they came in for a temporary deal. So technically, there was never a permanent issuance for that. You know, that's what I'm saying. You know, it's kind of hard, you know, looking back at it to see what we approved under a temporary permit, and then now what's existing now, you know, I don't know, because they never really got a variance for some of this stuff that's there.
Mr. Tropoli?
Mr. Sayed.
I'm hearing what Mr. Chairman is saying, Chairman Nansen. What say you about the temporary versus never being, you know, permanent?
I don't have the resolution in front of me from 2013.
Yeah.
But my recollection was that the Reynolds came in front of us seeking the temporary building for them to make it was simply, I think, the temporary use of the yurt, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
And the purpose of the yurt was to provide a place for the school to continue when they were going to construct either an addition or make I believe it was an addition to the building, which never occurred. So, you know, other than identifying what was on the site in 2013, as Charlie said, even identifying that it probably was the same in 2002 up until pretty much present day, I don't know what the validity of the 2013 temporary resolution would prove. because you're looking at it under a completely different standard, I think.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I think what really we need to concentrate here on not what happened in 2013, because I don't really think it's dispositive of anything in this case. This is a use variance application. It's not a site plan application, but certainly there are integral site plan issues which you'll never get to, and the site would never be improved unless, of course, you move through this in a positive way. And again, I'm not advocating one way or another, but I don't see the validity of anything in 2013, Mr. Saya, to be honest with you, respectively.
Right. So then, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm looking for your guidance on this one, sir, because I'm troubled by all of it.
Yeah. Well, as far as my guidance, I've got to let you guys listen to the testimony, hear the testimony up there. I don't want to sway the board one way or the other. You have to go with how you feel, moving forward here. Have they met their burden of proof to warrant an expansion on this site? That's what you got to look at. You got to look at what they're proposing to do, and the testimony, not just our professionals, not their professionals, but everybody in concern. That's what you got to listen to, and you got to see, if they're going to correct some of the problems, which Mr. Toto has stated that they were going to try to correct some of the water drainage problems. But, there are some problems that they can't correct. And I know that, the farmland buffer is one of them that they can't correct. But I think in 1988, I think it predated, our farmland buffer, before we even had the buffers. So, that's what we got to look at that point in time. But, at this time, I think everybody has pretty much beat this one down. So, it's going to be totally up to the board, what y'all want to do. And, at this point in time, I'm going to ask the board, what your pleasure is.
Mr. Chairman, apologies for interrupting. May I have 5 minutes with my client to talk?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, you sure can.
Thank you.
Eileen, we're going to take 5-minute break here.
Okay, at this time, the board is going to take a 5-minute recess. They'll be back about 9:03.
Thank you.
The zoning board will now reconvene.
Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Paul, there he is. Hey, Paul. Yes, sir, Mr. Toto.
Chairman, with the board's approval, we'd like to carry the matter, do a little bit of research with regard to the board's concerns, the neighbors' concerns, address those, come back again with the use variance request, but certainly come up with a few more answers than what we have this evening.
Okay.
Despite my feeling that what we're doing is, what we have is ready for approval. I don't want to push the issue. I know the board members have a number of questions. We seek to resolve those and make this a more complete application, as it were. So
Okay.
we'd like to come back.
Okay. I would advise you, please reach out to Charlie and Jennifer,
Absolutely.
And also Ron, reach out to Ron Tropoli, from the prior. But once that's addressed, I think the board, will feel more at ease voting on something. And my concerns is the farm. I'm going to tell you that right now, Mr. Layton. I'm a farmer myself. I know how things happen around me. I've lost feels to development. It's not that I'm bitter towards development, but sensible development, that's where it's got to be. And I feel for Mr. Layton, and because I've had the same thing happen to me. And if it's something that could be corrected, let's correct it. And that's how I feel, and
That's our plan.
okay, that sounds good. Paul, does that set your mind at ease a little bit?
Sir, we didn't create this. We need to make sure it's right going forward. So as long as everyone's pulling on the same rope to bring this to a sensible solution that solves all concerns, then it puts my mind at ease.
Okay. And I see Mr. Layton is still on with this. I hope that brings you a little at ease too. So anyway, okay.
Are we
Seeing
going to
none-
carry this to a date?
Yes, we are. We need to get a date.
I would imagine, Mr. Chairman, that Walter's going to need a considerable amount of time to speak with Rob, work with Charlie, bring our certified tree expert on board who's not here tonight. I'm sure Jen can bring her up to date on that. So you have an expiration date of May 28th. It's March now. Do you have any suggestions, Mr. Toto? I know that that Eileen will look up the dates, and Rob, what would you think, just to come back with a working model of what the stormwater management could look like?
I'm thinking we're gonna need something at least in the beginning of May timeframe at the earliest.
And Ron, we could, if May works, that's great. And if the board wants an extension beyond May, I'm happy to grant that as well.
Right. Why don't we get an extension to say June 30th, and we'll see if we can't fit you into May somewhere.
That works. That's acceptable.
Eileen, does that look workable schedule-wise?
Sure, I can give them May 24th for now.
And is that without the need for further notice?
Yes.
Thank you.
May 24th.
And an extension of time on the record through June 30th?
Yes.
Yep.
Applicant concurs, June 30th extension.
Thank you.
Guys, I'm trying to find my agenda here. Hang on. In my paperwork.
Chairman, BA 18-23,
Go for it.
Home Sweet Home Daycare Center.
We'll
Go
be-
ahead. We're gonna move this
Carry it to May 24th.
May 24th.
And the applicant is giving us an extension of time.
And without further public notice.
Yes, without further public notice. So, Mr. Layton, I know you can hear that, May 24th. You can write that down on your calendar. And also,
Brinkman.
Mr. Brickman, you be sure and put that on your calendar also, sir.
And Miss Allison, if she wants to come back.
Yes. So, okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Toda.
Thank you, Board Chairman, members of
Thank
the
you,
board,
Maria.
everyone. We appreciate your time this evening. We look forward to seeing you
Rob.
again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Okay, is there any further business of the board?
I have nothing else.
Okay. Any
Next
board
meeting?
members? Anything else of the board members?
When's the
Next-
next meeting?
The next
I-
meeting is March 22nd, 2 weeks from tonight. I'll be sending out the links tomorrow.
Okay, can you, is it changed from the package you sent me?
No, it's exactly the
Please-
same.
Please send me well, never mind, I got my printer fixed, so I can print out the agenda, so.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. So, okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn. We're ready.
Motion by Mr. Moretti. Do I have a second?
Second by
Second that.
Stan.
Seconded by Mr. Sayad. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you guys for hanging in there. I appreciate it. We'll see you next meeting.
Okay,
Thank
everyone,
you,
have a good night.
Eileen.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.